Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Maria Muñoz. Maria Muñoz was born on January 25, 1989, in Puerto Rico, to Marisol Rodriguez and Jorge Luis Muñoz. She was one of 3 children, and her early life was marked by a significant loss when her mother passed away. It was during this time that Maria met Joel Pellet, who was 11 years her senior. Despite their age difference, they got married in 2011. Joel Pellet, a nursing student at the time, had big dreams, and Maria was also a nurse. After their wedding, they moved to Laredo, Texas, where Joel Pellet secured a high-paying job as a nurse anesthetist at a local hospital. Maria Muñoz, 31, was a devoted stay-at-home mom in Laredo, Texas, dedicating her time to caring for her 2 young sons and her husband, Joel Pellet, 40. She had left her job to focus on raising her children, and her days were filled with activities like taking them to the park and reading to them before bed. Although she was happy at home with her children, she had always dreamed of returning to school to become a nurse again. On the surface, Joel Pellet's family looked perfect. Joel Pellet often shared family photos with friends and colleagues, proudly talking about his wonderful wife and children. However, beneath the surface, a different reality was taking place. In 2018, after the birth of their second son, people close to Joel Pellet noticed a significant change in his behavior. He lost weight, gained muscle, and became more outgoing, especially with women. His behavior was flirtatious and not what was expected of a married man. He also started removing photos of his wife and children from social media, replacing them with pictures of himself alone. This change gave the impression that he was single. Around the same time, colleagues observed Joel Pellet growing closer to a surgical nurse named Janet Arando. It became clear that they were having an affair behind Maria's back. In early 2020, Maria discovered evidence of their relationship when she found airline tickets Joel Pellet had purchased for himself and Janet to travel to Europe. This revelation devastated Maria, leaving her feeling heartbroken, depressed, and betrayed. She had trusted her husband and thought their marriage was strong, but the discovery shattered her trust. Maria's world was turned upside down when she discovered that her 10-year marriage was a sham. Overwhelmed with emotions, she felt lost and alone, struggling to come to terms with the devastating truth. Seeking guidance, she began therapy sessions to cope with her mental health struggles, and her therapist prescribed medication to support her through this difficult time. As a way to process her emotions, Maria started keeping a journal to express her thoughts and feelings. As the situation between Maria and Joel Pellet continued to deteriorate, tensions escalated. On September 19, 2020, Maria visited Janet's house, where she found Joel Pellet's car parked in the driveway. Confronting him, Maria gave him an ultimatum: choose between her and Janet. Joel Pellet's response was clear: he chose Janet. The argument became heated, prompting Janet to call the police. However, by the time they arrived, Maria and Joel Pellet had already left the scene. Maria was driving with Joel Pellet when the police called her. She could hear him yelling in the background. When they arrived home, he became extremely angry and punched a hole in Maria's car windshield, demonstrating a disturbing level of aggression. The next morning, Maria sent Joel Pellet a text message stating her intention to hire a lawyer to help resolve their issues. Joel Pellet responded, suggesting they handle the situation on their own to avoid the costs associated with hiring lawyers. However, just a few hours later, Joel Pellet appeared to have a change of heart. He sent Maria an email expressing his deep sadness and emotional pain. In the email, Joel Pellet conveyed his desire to have an honest and calm conversation with Maria. Maria replied to the email, and they agreed to meet the following evening at around 5 p.m. On Monday, September 21st, before going to meet him, Maria was so nervous and then messaged her friend Yasmin Martinez that today they were going to meet. The next day, a terrifying turn of events unfolded. At around 1:40 a.m. on September 22, 2020, a distressed call was made to 911. Joel Pellet claimed that his wife may have ingested some prescription medication and was not breathing. DEA Officer Cruz was first on the scene and his body camera captured everything that happened next. He found Joel Pellet at the top of the stairs near the master bedroom, Joel Pellet dressed in hospital gown and performing CPR on Maria, while their son slept in a nearby room. When the paramedics arrived, they took charge of performing CPR on Maria. Meanwhile, another police officer approaches Joel Pellet to ask about the pills Maria took. Joel Pellet quickly retrieved a pill bottle from the nearby bathroom, handing it over to the officers. An examination of the bottle revealed that it contained clonazepam, a prescription medication used to treat anxiety, panic attacks, and sometimes epilepsy, prescribed in Joel Pellet's name, not Maria's. The officer noticed two suspicious details. First, the pill bottle had been returned to the medicine cabinet, which is unusual in overdose cases where the bottle typically remains near the victim. Secondly, body camera footage showed Joel Pellet picking up the pill container from the floor and putting it in his pocket before claiming to have found it in the bathroom. DEA Officer Cruz wondered why he would need to retrieve the pills, which made him suspect that Joel Pellet might be hiding something. Another suspicious discovery was a needle catheter on the stairs of their home. This seemed odd to him. Joel Pellet and Maria had two young children, so finding a needle on the stairs raised questions about why it was there. Investigations revealed more than just a needle at the scene. A medical bag was found containing syringes and 4 equipment, all neatly packed. While this might seem ordinary for an anesthesia nurse like Maria, the presence of these medical tools outside a hospital setting sparked questions for investigators. Joel Pellet told officers that Maria had been struggling with severe depression, which had gotten worse recently. Despite the efforts of the medical team, Maria could not be saved. Tragically, she was pronounced dead at 3:58 a.m. After Maria was declared dead, the officers took Joel Pellet downstairs to the kitchen for further questioning. Joel Pellet explained that he and Maria had met earlier that day to talk, during which they became intimate. Afterward, he took a shower, and when he came out, he found Maria sleeping. When he returned upstairs, he found Maria unresponsive and not breathing. As Joel Pellet spoke with the officer, his behavior seemed unusual. He was sweating heavily and struggled to answer basic questions about what happened. The officer noted that Joel Pellet's level of sweating was noticeably higher than anyone else present, including the first responder who had been trying to save Maria's life for the past 2 hours. This raised the officer's suspicion, leading them to take Joel Pellet to the police station with Sergeant Lisa Mata for more questioning. Joel Pellet was left alone in the interrogation room at the police station for a period of time before an officer arrived. Unbeknownst to him, his every move was being recorded on video. When officers reviewed the footage, they were shocked to see Joel Pellet's sudden and extreme behavior. He began screaming, crying, and hitting the walls, and even threw furniture around the room. His outburst was so loud that it frightened people in the hallway and nearby rooms. At 4 a.m., Sergeant Lewis Matt entered the room to speak with Joel Pellet. During their conversation, Joel Pellet opened up about the events leading up to Maria's death. He also made a shocking confession: he had been involved with another woman, Janet, and had been living with her for 5 months prior to Maria's death. Joel Pellet revealed that he had been in a relationship with Janet for 2 years, and Maria had been aware of the affair. According to Joel Pellet, on the night of Maria's death, he visited the home to discuss their marriage with Maria. After their conversation, they became intimate. Joel Pellet claimed that he thought Maria was asleep in her room, but when he checked on her 10 minutes later, he found her unresponsive. Joel Pellet also confessed to giving Maria the medication clonazepam, which had been prescribed to him to help with anxiety and depression. However, he was unable to provide details about the dosage or how many pills were left in the bottle before Maria took them. Despite further questioning, Joel Pellet was unable to provide any additional information to clarify the situation. After the interrogation, he was released. The next step in the investigation was to perform Maria's autopsy, which took place just 8 hours after her death. This quick turnaround meant that any substance that had caused her death should still be present in her stomach contents. However, when the autopsy results came in, they revealed a surprising twist: no pills were found in her stomach. Instead, the medical examiner's report revealed a small, red pinprick mark on the inside of her elbow. This mark was concerning because it suggested that Maria may have been injected with something. The discovery of this mark led investigators to explore its significance and potential connection to her death. As they dug deeper, they discovered a journal at Maria's house. Maria had started keeping a journal to cope with her anxiety and depression. The journal proved to be a crucial piece of evidence, helping investigators identify the culprit behind her death. Maria's journal revealed her heartbreaking experiences and thoughts. Despite knowing her husband Joel Pellet wanted to be with someone else, Maria wanted to preserve their family and expressed her love for him. In her journal entries, she poured out her emotions, detailing the pain of Joel Pellet leaving their home in Laredo and leaving her to care for their 2 young sons alone. Her diary and cell phone recordings also helped investigators uncover Joel Pellet's abusive behavior. Maria's journal entries exposed her emotional journey, from grief and heartbreak to healing and newfound hope for the future. She wrote about feeling trapped in a constant internal battle. She begged for her emotional turmoil to end, describing how her past haunted her, her present was confusing, and her future was uncertain. In a poignant cry for help, Maria turned to a higher power, pleading for an end to her suffering. She asked for laughter, peace, and happiness to return to her life, and for her heart and mind to be free from pain and torture. Maria Muñoz's journal entries from the day before her death revealed her desire to move forward with her life. There was no indication of suicidal thoughts or plans to end her life. As a result, investigators initially ruled out the possibility of suicide. To gain a deeper understanding of the circumstances surrounding her death, they sought additional information. Dr. John Hunsinger, anesthesiologist, reviewed the autopsy findings and contacted the lead detective, DEA Cruz, to express his concerns. Dr. John Hunsinger recommended a comprehensive toxicology screening, which the investigators subsequently conducted. In January 2021, Sergeant Louis Matt and DEA Cruz received toxicology test results that contradicted Joel Pellet's claim that Maria had been given clonazepam. The report actually showed that Maria's body did not have that drug. However, it revealed something more astonishing: the presence of 7 other powerful drugs. These medications, typically used in surgical procedures, included morphine, Demerol, Versed, propofol, and ketamine, as well as lidocaine and Naren. Specifically, propofol and ketamine are commonly used as sedatives and painkillers during surgeries. Administered through and for. The unusual presence of these drugs was significant, as they are tightly controlled and rarely accessed outside of anesthesiology departments, making it difficult for even many medical professionals to obtain them. The discovery of propofol in Maria's system was the most startling revelation for the investigators. Investigators believe that Joel Pellet, as a nurse anesthetist, had access to propofol due to his profession. Dr. Hunsinger, who worked with Joel Pellet and had experience with propofol, was shocked by the amount found in Maria's system, saying it was the highest amount he had ever seen. This led doctors to believe that propofol was the direct cause of Maria's death. They reasoned that, given his profession, Joel Pellet would have known the proper dosage to either anesthetize someone or cause an overdose. Additionally, a small mark on Maria's arm suggested that she may have been injected with some substance. Considering the autopsy report, Joel Pellet's suspicious behavior. And Maria's journal entries, the investigators believed they had enough evidence to arrest Joel Pellet for the murder of his wife. An arrest warrant was promptly issued, and authorities took Joel Pellet into custody without incident, as if he had anticipated and accepted his fate. Joel Pellet was then taken to the police station, marking a new phase in the investigation. The trial started on March 21, 2023. As the legal proceedings unfolded, both the prosecution and defense presented their cases. A prosecution team composed entirely of women known as Maria's team utilized Maria Muñoz's journal entries to construct a compelling case against Joel Pellet. By sharing Maria's diary entries, prosecutors wanted to show the jury that Maria was a wonderful, caring, and intelligent mother whose vibrant spirit shone through the pages of her diary. The prosecutors alleged that Joel Pellet first drugged Maria by lacing her drink with a substance to make her sleepy. Once she was unconscious, they believed he injected her with propofol. Additionally, they suspected that Joel Pellet deliberately delayed calling 911, waiting long enough to ensure that first responders would be unable to revive her when they arrived. The prosecution team stated that Maria's journals helped them understand the challenges she faced, which fueled their determination to seek justice in her case. Roberto Bali, Joel Pellet's lawyer, informed the jury that his client had been trying to work on his marriage with Maria Muñoz before her death. Roberto Bali noted that the medical examiner's report still did not clearly state the cause of Maria's death, and there was not enough evidence to prove Joel Pellet was responsible for her death. Roberto Bali pointed out that Joel Pellet had given Maria a medication called Naren, used to counteract overdoses, on the night she died. He also acknowledged that both Joel Pellet and Maria had struggled with drug addiction in the past. However, Roberto Bali argued that Maria had willingly taken the drugs without being forced, as there were no signs of trauma or coercion on her body. Despite this, investigators found that Maria did not have a history of drug addiction and that Joel Pellet was the only one who could have provided her with the large quantity of propofol. Maria was murdered, and Joel Pellet was put on trial for the crime. During the trial, it was revealed that Joel Pellet had given Maria a substance to calm her down, and he had brought home drugs, including propofol, from work. The jury quickly reached a verdict, finding Joel Pellet guilty of murder after just 1 hour of deliberation. The trial lasted for 9 days, concluding on March 30, 2023, with the guilty verdict. Joel Pellet was later sentenced to life in prison for the murder, plus an additional 10 years for tampering with evidence and a $10,000 fine. This sentence was handed down on April 27, 2023. The motive behind Joel Pellet's killing of his wife Maria Muñoz is not entirely clear, but the prosecution believes it was driven by his desire to end his marriage and start a new relationship with his girlfriend Janet Arridan. As a result, Joel Pellet was held accountable for his actions. The case of Corey Richens. Eric Richens was born on May 13, 1982, and his life had a profound impact on those around him. Eric was a sports enthusiast who actively participated in basketball, baseball, and soccer. He had a particular passion for outdoor activities, especially hunting. His love for the outdoors was evident in the numerous trophies he collected from around the world. Eric was a fun-loving person who lived in Utah and enjoyed exploring the outdoors with his many motorized vehicles. He was also deeply committed to his faith as a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. With his family's support, Eric served a 2-year mission in Mexico City, where he became fluent in Spanish. After high school, Eric attended the University of Utah, graduating in 2009 with a degree in international studies and a minor in Spanish. It was during this time that he met Corey Richens, who worked at Home Depot. Eric, who often visited the store for work, developed a friendly relationship with Corey and was drawn to her charm and beauty. However, He was too nervous to approach her directly, so he asked a friend to help him get her contact information. While shopping at Home Depot, a friend of Eric's approached Curry and quietly asked for her phone number, saying that Eric wanted to get to know her better. Eric called Curry and they arranged to meet in person. Eric and Curry clicked immediately when they met. Their connection was real, and their first date marked the start of a wonderful romance. As they met each other's families, their relationship grew even stronger. Curry's family welcomed Eric with open arms, and Eric's family was just as impressed with Curry's kindness and how well she fit in with them. Eric's two older sisters, Katie and Amy, were initially cautious of Curry, but they soon grew fond of and accepted Curry. In 2013, Eric and Curry tied the knot in a private ceremony, marking the beginning of their life together. They welcomed their first child, Carter, shortly after. The family continued to grow with the arrival of Ashton and then Weston, completing their happy family portrait. As a father, Eric found his footing quickly. His sons looked up to him and admired everything he did. Eric, in turn, took immense pride in his children's accomplishments, whether it was their academic achievements, sports victories, or creative pursuits. He was always present to support and celebrate their successes. Eric's entrepreneurial spirit led him to start a stonemasonry business, which flourished due to his exceptional craftsmanship and attention to detail. As a result, his business attracted many clients, providing financial security for Eric and his family. Curry was a successful real estate entrepreneur who contributed significantly to the family's income. Her expertise in the local market and business acumen made her a valuable partner in their growing family. She would buy homes, renovate them, and sell them at a profit. The Curry family appeared to have it all, with a lifestyle that seemed perfect on the surface. But beneath this facade, trouble was brewing. On March 4, 2020, the illusion of perfection shattered when Curry called 911 to report that her husband Eric was unresponsive. When paramedics arrived at the scene, they found that Eric had already passed away. Curry was devastated by the news and immediately called her mother, Lisa, who rushed to her side. Curry's brothers, DJ and Ronnie, also joined them, and together they struggled to come to terms with the loss. Earlier that night, Curry had been celebrating a business success with Eric, marking the purchase of a mansion for her real estate company. Before bed, she had made Eric a Moscow Mule, a drink made with ginger beer and vodka. Curry had gone to bed around 9 p.m., but instead of sleeping in her own bed, she had lain down with her 9-year-old son in his room because he was having nightmares. Curry returned to her bedroom around 3 a.m. and found Eric unresponsive. When she touched Eric, she felt that her husband was extremely cold. Realizing that something was wrong, Curry waited for paramedics to arrive and followed the dispatcher's instructions to perform CPR on Eric. Curry claimed to have followed the instructions given to her. However, the paramedics were unsure what caused Eric's death, and the lack of information led them to consider the possibility of an aneurysm, given that Eric was a 39-year-old man with no known medical conditions. Further investigation revealed that Eric had complained of chest pains to Curry the night before he died, which initially strengthened the suspicion of an aneurysm. The autopsy results were unexpected and came as a surprise to all parties involved in the case. It was discovered that Eric died from a fatal dose of fentanyl, a powerful painkiller that can be fatal if overdosed. From the moment Eric died, his family began to suspect that his recreational drug use may have contributed to the fentanyl in his system. Curry explained that Eric used a nightly THC gummy as a way to unwind after a long day. However, the family had concerns about where Eric was getting these gummies. They suspected that Eric wasn't always buying them from trustworthy sources, and that he might have been purchasing them on the street instead. Eric's mother-in-law, Lisa, was particularly worried because Eric had a history of recreational drug use and may have also bought pain pills from street vendors without knowing they might contain fentanyl, unknowingly putting his life at risk. Eric's family strongly rejected the allegations, convinced that something else was responsible and encouraging investigators to consider other possibilities. Meanwhile, Curry struggled to rebuild her life. According to her brother Ronnie, she faced numerous challenges, including the void left by her husband's absence. To manage her grief and comfort her children, Curry found a creative outlet. She self-published a children's book, Are You With Me? On Amazon, aiming to help kids deal with the loss of a loved one. The book tells the story of a boy missing his deceased father through illustrations and storytelling, allowing Curry to channel her emotions into a positive project. Curry portrayed Eric as a constant, loving presence in her book, watching over their son. Her mother, Lisa, appreciated the book, saying it helped her family cope with their emotions and find some comfort. However, as detectives looked into Eric's death, they suspected foul play was involved. In a shocking twist, Curry was arrested and charged with her husband's murder on May 8, 2023, just weeks after she had publicly shared her grief and promoted her book on local Utah news stations. The community was stunned by the news, struggling to understand the sudden turn of events. Curry, who initially gained public sympathy for her efforts to help children cope with loss, has become embroiled in a devastating scandal. According to court documents, Curry allegedly killed her husband Eric by administering a lethal dose of a poison. Curry intentionally spiked Eric's drink, a Moscow Mule, with a fatal amount of fentanyl on the night of his death. However, Curry's lawyer disputes this, stating that no fentanyl was found on the glassware at their home. Curry denies any involvement in Eric's death, insisting she had no reason to harm him. Curry's mother, Lisa, has expressed shock and confusion over the allegations, maintaining that they was happy and had no issues that would have led Curry to kill Eric. During the investigation, detectives discovered that Curry and Eric's relationship was not as perfect as it appeared. They had their differences, and Curry, a stay-at-home mother, craved independence. She was also annoyed by Eric's frequent hunting trips. Lisa claimed that Eric was having an affair, but his family denied this. They sought counseling, but Eric's family said it was because he loved his sons and wanted to make the marriage work. Eric considered divorce and took steps to protect his assets, secretly setting up a trust with his sister Katie. During the investigation, 6 life insurance policies on Eric were found, totaling $3 million. 2 months prior to his death, Curry had also forged Eric's signature on another policy valued at $100,000. It was also discovered that Curry had been embezzling money from Eric's personal accounts and misusing funds from his business over several years. Curry's financial situation was reportedly dire, despite claims that her house flipping business was thriving. In reality, the business was millions of dollars in debt. According to Eric's family representative, Curry urgently needed money. A premarital agreement, signed by Curry, revealed that she had waived her claim to Eric's business assets. However, if Eric were to die before her while they were still married, she would inherit the assets. Curry's lawyer denied the claims that her business was in debt. They explained that taking out lines of credit was a normal part of the house flipping business, and that the debt would be paid off when the houses were sold. The lawyer also clarified that the large amount of debt mentioned by the spokesperson was simply a result of normal business transactions. Curry's mother, Lisa, stated that Eric had been very supportive of Curry's business ventures, especially when it came to buying Heejin, where they were celebrating on the night of his death. Heejin was situated on a 10-acre estate in Heber Valley, close to popular ski resorts and Deer Creek Reservoir. Curry discovered a long-abandoned mansion that had been built in 2017. She joined forces with a group of investors to make a substantial offer on the property, using their collective resources to finance the purchase. Her plan was to transform the estate into a popular recreational destination. Although Eric initially seemed to support the purchase, his family later disputed this claim. They recalled that Eric had strongly opposed the idea of buying Haitian and had even argued with Curry about it. The family's spokesperson made a shocking allegation on the night of Eric's death. Curry had given him a drink spiked with fentanyl. Furthermore, they claimed that this was not the first time Curry had attempted to harm Eric. Eric's family claims Curry tried to harm him twice. First, during a 2019 trip to Greece, they say Curry gave Eric a drink that made him violently ill. Curry's brother Ronnie disputes this, suggesting Eric was taking antibiotics and shouldn't have had liquor. Ronnie says the bartender may have made a mistake, preparing a drink with liquor instead of the virgin drink Eric ordered. A second incident allegedly occurred on Valentine's Day 2022, 1 month before Eric's death. Curry brought Eric a sandwich that caused him to break out in hives and have trouble breathing. The court documents stated that 2 days after Eric's death, Curry punched his sister Amy in the neck and face when she tried to open a safe containing between $125,000 and $165,000 in cash. Curry claimed she was acting in self-defense when she tried to retrieve important documents from a safe. However, she was charged with assault a month after the incident and eventually pleaded no contest. In June 2023, Curry attended a bail hearing, which lasted 4 hours. During the hearing, prosecutors presented 3 witnesses and evidence to support their claim that Curry had poisoned her husband. A cell phone expert testified about Google searches found on Curry's phone, including inquiries about retrieving deleted text messages from an iPhone, whether the FBI could access deleted messages, and the lethal dose of fentanyl. However, Curry's attorney argued that these searches were conducted after her husband's death, as Curry sought information to defend herself against accusations of murder. Prosecutors also contacted the lead detective involved in the case and questioned him about any potential sources that Curry could have used to obtain the drugs that were used to kill Eric. The detective shared information from an interview with Carmen Labor, a woman who claimed to work as a cleaner for Curry's business and home. In early 2022, Carmen told investigators about a conversation she had with Curry. Curry asked her to buy fentanyl for an investor who supposedly had a back injury. Carmen, who had a history of drug-related crimes and was on probation for distributing drugs at the time of the interview, agreed to Curry's request. She said she bought 15 to 30 fentanyl pills and later met with Curry to exchange them for cash. This exchange happened on February 11, 2022, just 3 days before Valentine's Day, when Curry allegedly tried to poison Eric with a sandwich. During the investigation, Carmen told the detective that Curry contacted her again, asking for stronger drugs. This time, Carmen revealed that Curry paid her for the pills with a check. A week after Eric's death, Curry gave Carmen a $1,300 check. However, Curry's lawyer disputed this, suggesting that the check could have been for cleaning services instead of payment for drugs. The detective agreed that this was a possible explanation. Curry's lawyer also questioned Carmen's credibility, pointing out that she was a convicted felon on probation for serious crimes. The lawyer argued that Carmen's history made her an unreliable witness. They claimed that Carmen might have lied about selling the drugs because the detective told her she would face a long prison sentence if she didn't cooperate with the investigation. Curry's lawyer asked if there was any physical evidence to prove that Carmen had bought the drugs. The detective replied that no such evidence existed. Specifically, no text messages were found where Curry directly asked Carmen for drugs. Additionally, no witnesses came forward to confirm that they saw Carmen and Curry exchanging drugs. Eric's sister pleaded with the judge at the bail hearing to keep Curry in custody, sharing the family's trauma and concerns about reliving the horrific circumstances of Eric's death if Curry was released on bail. The judge granted the request and denied Curry bail. However, Curry's family was upset by the decision and worried about her well-being in jail. They felt that her time in custody was affecting her physically and mentally. Curry experienced a health scare in jail after taking prescribed medication. She suffered a seizure and was rushed to the hospital. She claimed that jail officials had given her the wrong medication, leading to severe side effects. Thankfully, Curry recovered after receiving medical treatment. Jail officials found a handwritten letter in Curry's cell after she was hospitalized. The letter was never sent, but it was included in the court records and presented by prosecutors as evidence. They claimed it was written by Curry to her mother and showed her intentions and motivations. Prosecutors asked the court to limit Curry's contact with her mother and brothers in November 2023. The main reason was the letter found in Curry's cell, which prosecutors said was an attempt to influence witnesses. They alleged that in the letter, Curry gave her mother instructions on how her brother Ronnie should behave in court. Curry allegedly asked Ronnie to lie about Eric's behavior during a trip to Mexico. Specifically, Curry wanted Ronnie to falsely testify that Eric had admitted to buying pain pills in Mexico. Curry also told Ronnie to gather text messages from Eric that discussed his drug use. Curry stressed the importance of linking Eric's activities in Mexico to his alleged involvement with drugs. However, Curry claimed that the letter was not an attempt to tamper with a witness, but rather a work of fiction. A judge agreed, stating that the prosecution had failed to prove that Curry was attempting to interfere with the testimony. Currently, Curry and her family are trying to gain custody of their 3 sons, who are living with a relative. Despite being in jail, Curry regularly talks to her children through video calls. Her family attends their public events, but is not allowed private visits with they. Curry faces severe penalties if found guilty of murdering her husband Eric by lacing his drink with fentanyl. She could receive a prison sentence ranging from 25 years to life imprisonment. Moreover, she is dealing with multiple civil lawsuits related to Eric's estate, including disputes over custody of their children. The outcome of these custody battles has significant financial implications, as control of the children grants control over Eric's estate, fueling tensions between Curry's and Eric's families. Curry's trial is expected to begin sometime in 2025. The case of Sierra Lamar. In March 2012, the Lamar family, consisting of Steve, a computer expert, his wife Marlene, and their 2 daughters, Danielle and Sierra, living in Fremont, California. Sierra was younger sister. She was born on October 19, 1996. Both girls had a relatively comfortable upbringing, with the usual ups and downs that come with family life. However, a disturbing fact about their father's past had a profound impact on the family. When Danielle and Sierra were younger, their father, Steve, was involved in a serious incident involving inappropriate behavior with one of their roommates during a sleepover. As a result, Steve was sentenced to 1 year in prison. Despite Steve's past convictions, both Sierra and Danielle reported having a good relationship with him, describing him as a kind and respected father. However, when Marlene learned about the incident, they decided to end their relationship, which was already struggling. Marlene soon moved on and started a new relationship. Despite this, both Sierra and Danielle attended Washington High School in their community, where they enjoyed socializing and performed reasonably well academically. Sierra was a cheerful and lively girl who was well-liked at school. She enjoyed participating in dance competitions and cheerleading. In October 2011, her mother, Marlene, decided to move from Fremont to Morgan Hill, a town located 40 miles southwest. Sierra, her mother, and her mother's boyfriend, Rick Gardner, settled into a rented ranch-style home on a rural cul-de-sac. However, Sierra was initially unhappy about leaving behind her close friends and hobbies in Fremont. She struggled to adjust to her new school, Sobrato High, where she didn't receive the same warm welcome she had at Washington High. Despite this, Sierra eventually settled in and made new friends, earning the respect and even joining the cheerleading squad again. By March 2012, Sierra had adapted well to her new environment. On March 11th, she had a conversation with her father and her sister, who still lived in Fremont, and updated them on her progress. The conversation was mostly positive, with Sierra expressing excitement about an upcoming school project, wanting to get her hair colored, and discussing her homework with her sister. Her academic performance seemed to be going well. Sierra ended her Thursday evening chat with Danielle and Steve after dinner, as she had school the next day and it was getting late. They agreed to part ways and promised to catch up soon, unaware that this would be their last conversation. The next morning, February 16, 2012, Sierra got ready for school, locking the house behind her. At 6:29 a.m., she tweeted a friend, then put on her shoes and left to catch the bus. The bus stop was located on a desolate road between Palm and Dewey Avenues, far from Sierra's school, Sobrato High. Many students, including Sierra, had to cross this road daily to catch the bus. At 7:11 a.m., Sierra texted a friend to meet up before class. However, when the bus arrived at 7:11 and 15 seconds a.m., Sierra was missing. Sierra didn't show up to school, which her friends found unusual. However, they didn't think it was serious enough to report to the school authorities. The day went on as usual. When the school day ended, Marlene, Sierra's mom, tried to contact Sierra, but her call went straight to voicemail. Although Marlene thought this was strange, she didn't get worried. However, when she got home and saw that Sierra's room was still empty, she realized that something was amiss. She contacted Steve to ask if Sierra was planning to visit him in Fremont again. Unfortunately, the answer was no. When Marlene called Danielle and a few other friends, they all left with the same message that Sierra could not be found. Marlene began to panic when she called Sierra's high school and discovered that she had missed all her classes. After her calling the authorities, officers were immediately sent to the pedo-Hispanic court. They began by speaking with those closest to Sierra, including several of her friends, who were all candid about the difficulties Sierra and her family were facing. Although Sierra was generally content, it had only been a few months since her mother's divorce forced her to leave her family and old friends behind. Authorities initially thought that Sierra might have left voluntarily, as she had previously mentioned returning to Fremont in a light-hearted and sometimes serious manner. However, there were several things that contradicted this theory. Sierra had stopped posting on social media, her phone was turned off, and all calls went straight to voicemail. She also never arrived at the front door of her home. Her loved ones launched a massive search despite police downplaying her disappearance. The investigation into Sierra's disappearance led to a complex trail of evidence. 2 days after she vanished, data forensics began examining her phone's previous activity. They discovered that her phone had briefly turned on in the middle of the night, before turning off again. The phone's coordinates pointed to a field near Sierra's house, which became a crucial lead in the investigation. A search crew thoroughly searched the fields where Sierra's phone had last been detected. Within minutes, they found the Samsung Galaxy phone she had been using. It was near the road, damaged, and had likely been thrown from a vehicle. Investigators concluded that Sierra hadn't turned on her phone that evening. Instead, they believed that rain had caused a false signal, briefly activating her phone. This coincidence was crucial, as the entire investigation hinged on the discovery of her phone. The case took a disturbing turn when detectives realized that Sierra's phone was probably thrown from a moving vehicle. There were no footprints, tire tracks, or other visible evidence. The next day, a search crew made another discovery. Sierra's backpack was found 2 kilometers from her house, discarded outside a barn. The bag contained her schoolwork, inhaler, and money, suggesting that she had been on her way to school and was forcibly separated from her essential items. Additionally, a complete outfit, believed to be the one Sierra was wearing the morning she vanished, was found in her luggage. This outfit included her pullover, pants, socks, shoes, and even undergarments. The outfit was subjected to DNA testing, which yielded results. Specifically, her pants contained male foreign DNA, suggesting that she had likely been assaulted. The discovery of Sierra's phone and clothing led to a surge of local and international sympathy. The search effort, which had already intensified significantly in the days following her disappearance, received a fresh wave of support. Authorities received over 1,000 new tips, and officers worked more than 7,000 hours. Multiple search teams, comprising over 800 individuals, were deployed to thoroughly search the area. They systematically examined every available lake and reservoir, combed over fields, and searched abandoned buildings. Sierra's disappearance was a major topic of discussion in the community, with missing person posters put up everywhere. Her parents offered a $10,000 reward for any credible information leading to her safe return. Despite the efforts of the community and investigators, only a golf ball and a flipper were found. However, unbeknownst to the public, investigators were making progress in identifying a potential suspect. 12 days after Sierra's disappearance, on March 28, DNA analysis revealed that the DNA on her pants belonged to a local man. As part of the investigation, DNA samples from all 57 registered sex offenders in the Morgan Hill zip code were compared to the DNA evidence. Sierra's father, who had a criminal record, proactively contacted law enforcement and was quickly eliminated as a suspect. One of the local men who had not been ruled out as a suspect was Antolin Garcia Torres. Following a DNA match between the 21-year-old man and Sierra's pants, he came to public attention. At the time, he lived in Maple Leaf Recreational Vehicle Park with his mother, pregnant wife, and daughter, about 7 miles from Sierra's house. Antolin Garcia Torres had a troubling past, had a challenging upbringing marked by abuse and neglect. His father, who was abusive and often drunk, had threatened to kill him and his mother before being imprisoned for molesting a young family member. The father's abusive behavior appears to have been passed on to his son. Although 2009 allegations of having sex with a minor were dismissed, Antolin Garcia Torres's DNA was collected. He was also detained in 2010 for impeding police operations. Due to the suspicious relationship between he and Sierra, detectives put him under constant surveillance. As it was unclear whether Sierra was still alive, Antolin Garcia Torres was the most likely person to have information. To monitor his activities, police tapped his phone, placed a GPS tracker in his car, and had 2 undercover investigators move into a vehicle park next to his house. After discovering that the vehicle park had cameras at the front door, investigators began reviewing security footage from the neighborhood around Antolin Garcia Torres's residence. They examined a film taken on the day of Sierra's disappearance to determine whether Antolin had left or arrived home. It was discovered that Antolin had left the campground in his red Volkswagen Jetta at 7 a.m. on the morning she vanished. Given that his home was only 7 miles from Sierra, Antolin's travel time matched the period during which Sierra could have been kidnapped. Although Antolin had left for work at the usual time, Safeway's shift records showed that he did not arrive at work on Sierra went missing. It was found that 3 years prior, there were 3 unsuccessful kidnapping attempts in the Safeway parking lot. But none of the perpetrators were identified or detained. The only evidence from these attempts was a taser dropped by the perpetrator, which had a fingerprint on one of its batteries. However, it was only a partial fingerprint, requiring a direct 1-to-1 comparison to match. The idea seemed promising, but when Antoline's fingerprints were compared to those on the taser, a surprising revelation emerged. In reality, their suspect was indeed Antoline. Antoline was taken into custody by investigators after being positively identified as someone who was present when Sierra went missing. His DNA was found on her pants, and he had a history of involvement in kidnappings. This evidence was enough to detain him for questioning and to seize his vehicle for further DNA testing. During the interview, the suspect, Antoline, showed arrogance and was dismissive of the questions. He claimed that on the day Sierra vanished, he had gone fishing and didn't know who she was. He was confident that the investigators wouldn't find any evidence against him. However, before the interview ended, Antoline made a strange revelation. He admitted to having a habit of strangling a snake while driving and then throwing the tissue out the window. He also claimed to have thrown out a used tissue in the exact spot where Sierra's bag was found on the morning she went missing. We already had a 1 in a million chance with the rain on Sierra's phone, and the police didn't believe Antoline's implausible explanation either. On May 21, 2012, Antoline Garcia Torres was formally detained in connection with Sierra Lamar's disappearance outside his workplace in a Safeway parking lot. This was the result of several distinct links between Sierra and Antoline's vehicle. A DNA test found her DNA on the interior door handle of the car's rear door. Additionally, fibers from the car seats matched those found on Sierra's clothing, and a piece of rope inside the car contained a strand of her hair. This proved beyond a doubt that she had been in his car at some point. However, even after his arrest, there was a significant issue. Despite the apparent evidence, Sierra's body had yet to be found. Could they accuse Antoline of first-degree murder without a body or verified death? In reality, Santa Clara County District Attorney Jeff Rosen announced on May 19, 2014, that he would seek the death penalty against Antoline. Although Antoline had previously pleaded not guilty to killing Sierra, the overwhelming evidence pointed to his guilt. Antoline's trial began on January 30, 2017, after being delayed. The trial was prolonged and stressful for all parties involved, with the prosecution and defense presenting lengthy arguments over 13 weeks of testimony. Antoline's defense team argued that his exposure to pesticides from surrounding fields during his childhood may have impaired his cognitive abilities. They claimed that this exposure was not his fault and, as a result, he should not be eligible for the death penalty. The defense argued that Antoline faced a unique disadvantage due to circumstances beyond his control. In a final attempt, Antoline's defense team requested a new trial, questioning the chief investigator's reliability and honesty, and alleging that he had tampered with evidence in the past. However, this attempt was denied. The jury convicted Antoline Garcia Torres of Sierra Lamar's first-degree murder on May 9, 2017. The evidence was so overwhelming against Antoline that he was unable to escape responsibility for his acts, even though Sierra's body has never been located. Outside of the evidence offered, Antoline was formally given a life sentence without the chance of parole after being spared the death penalty. Since his sentencing, Antoline has stayed largely silent, and despite receiving hundreds of letters from news organizations and total strangers, only one letter has been answered. Antoline wrote, "I hold fast to my innocence, and I'm not going to talk about the matter." It's puzzling why Annalyn continues to claim innocence despite the overwhelming evidence against him. The presence of his DNA on Sierra's belongings, her DNA in his car, his past crimes, and a detailed timeline all clearly indicate his involvement in Sierra's disappearance. The search for Sierra Lamar is believed by some organizers to be the longest continuous search for a missing person in U.S. history. It spanned 3 years, with over 1,100 searches conducted within a 15-mile radius, totaling 50,000 man-hours of effort. Volunteers braved extreme weather conditions, from scorching summers to cold winters, in their quest for any information about Sierra. Despite the passing of time, many volunteers continue to search for her, driven by the desire to bring closure to her family, even though they acknowledge the likelihood of her being deceased. Currently, the whereabouts of Sierra's body remain unknown, but the hope is that one day, the Lamar family will find the closure they seek. The case of Anna Repkina. Anna Repkina, a 27-year-old woman from Chelyabinsk, Russia, she was a bright and ambitious individual from a good family. Her outlook on life was optimistic, and she yearned for love. Anna dreamed of getting married, starting a family, and building a home. Those who knew her remembered her infectious sense of humor and delightful personality. However, in 2016, Anna's world was turned upside down when her high school sweetheart ended their relationship of 7 years. Despite her heartbreak, she was determined to find true love and live a happy, fulfilling life. Anna decided to try online dating and signed up for several websites. She quickly matched with a man named William Hargrove on a Russian dating site. William, a 26-year-old from Oregon. He showered her with kindness and compliments, making an effort to be present for her despite the distance between them. People who know William describe him as a charismatic and humorous person. As Anna and William's online relationship progressed, they spoke every day and became more serious over the course of a few months. They shared many common interests, and Anna and William got along very well. William was the sweetest, he kept sending her flowers. Soon, they started talking about meeting in person. The chemistry was already there over the cell phone. Anna and William decided to meet in person, taking their months-long relationship one step further. In December 2016, Anna booked a flight to visit William in Oregon. However, there was a mix-up. Anna had accidentally booked a ticket to Portland, Maine, instead of Portland, Oregon. By the time the mistake was discovered, Anna had already arrived in Maine. Determined to spend the Christmas holidays with William, Anna rebooked her flight and arrived in Oregon just in time. William was there to greet her at the airport. Over the next 10 days, they experienced the ultimate festive romance. William also introduced Anna to his friends. And they shared a magical New Year's Eve countdown together, sealing their connection with a romantic kiss at midnight. At the end of Anna's 10-day visit, William proposed to her with his grandmother's emerald ring, and she accepted. However, what Anna didn't know was that William was already involved with someone else, his landlord, Michelle Chavez. Michelle was a 33-year-old married woman with 2 kids, but that didn't stop her and William's romantic relationship, which had been going on for over a year. When Anna visited William, she met Michelle, who was introduced to her as William's landlord, unaware of the true nature of their relationship. Michelle seemed to be aware of William's intentions to propose to Anna, but she didn't reveal their secret, possibly because she believed William would never leave her. Anna had returned to Russia after getting engaged to William and posted a picture of her ring on Facebook. The post appeared on Michelle's homepage, revealing the shocking news. Michelle was not only angry that her boyfriend, William, was engaged to another woman, but Michelle had also planned to leave her husband for him. In fact, Michelle had already taken off her wedding ring and given it to William as a symbol of her commitment. What Michelle didn't know was that William had given Anna the same ring that Michelle had given him. When Michelle confronted William about the engagement, he downplayed the situation, claiming that Anna meant nothing to him and that he would break off the engagement. However, on March 1, 2017, Anna returned to Oregon, ready to start her new life with William, bringing her wedding dress and a suitcase with her. She had even quit her job, expecting to be with William forever. Michelle was unhappy about the situation. Anna's mother, Yelena, had previously expressed concerns about her daughter moving to a new country for a man she barely knew. Yelena thought Anna was moving too quickly, but Anna insisted she was in love and didn't see the need to wait. Why Elena eventually gave her blessing. However, Michelle was furious when she realized Anna's visit was actually a permanent move. She asked William to find a new place to live, as she didn't want the engaged couple staying with her. William agreed and rented an apartment for himself and Anna. Despite this, William continued to secretly visit Michelle, reassuring her of his commitment to her and downplaying his relationship with Anna. Michelle grew increasingly worried about how serious Anna and William's relationship was becoming, so she decided to take action. She contacted Anna on Facebook and revealed everything that had been going on behind her back. Anna shared with William everything Michelle had told her, but he dismissed it as mere jealousy from an ex-girlfriend. Anna trusted William's explanation and decided to move forward with their wedding plans. They had set a date of March 23rd to get married by the sea. Anna wore the wedding dress she had brought from Russia, but the officiant failed to arrive. After a long wait, they returned home. According to William, the officiant was ill, and Anna believed him. However, William had been clear about his feelings. He didn't love Anna and saw her as unimportant. Despite this, Anna refused to accept the reality of the situation. Michelle was exhausted with the situation. On April 15th, she had reached her limit and told William he had to make a decision, her or Anna. Michelle made it clear that she wouldn't tolerate him leading a double life any longer. Michelle told William that if Anna wasn't out of the picture by Thursday, April 20th, she would take drastic action. When she said she would build a snowman, Michelle meant that she would harm or kill Anna and hide the body in a remote, cold location where it would never be found. After her conversation with William, Michelle couldn't reach him. She assumed he had chosen Anna and left him several voicemails to express her feelings. However, the next day, Sunday, April 16th, William called Michelle and told her that he was now single. He explained that he and Anna had broken up and she was returning to Russia. It was Easter Sunday, and Michelle had been attending a family gathering. However, Michelle left her family's celebration to meet William. They of them reconnected and reaffirmed their relationship by being intimate in William's car. On April 17th, Anna's body was discovered in a forest, but the investigators had no idea who she was. She didn't have any identification on her and had only been in the state for about a month, making it difficult to start the investigation. There was no murder weapon at the scene, but among the trash scattered around her body was a clear plastic bag. Inside the bag, detectives found a KFC receipt, an empty Pepsi cup, and a used KFC chicken wrapper. The KFC receipt turned out to be a crucial piece of evidence. The receipt contained the date, timestamp, and debit card number, which led investigators to Kevin Thomas, the owner of the debit card. Kevin, it turned out, was a close friend of William's. When questioned, Kevin revealed that he and William were very close. Kevin also mentioned that he and William had a tradition of going to KFC for lunch every Friday. The receipt was from a purchase made about a week before William was questioned by the police. During the questioning, the police mentioned that they had found garbage from KFC in the trash, which they believed was from the previous week. William acknowledged that he and Kevin regularly went to KFC on Fridays. It was revealed that Kevin had paid for his meal with a credit card, while William had paid in cash. Kevin had previously told the police about William's complicated relationship situation, which had only come to light during the investigation into Anna's death. Kevin also mentioned that William had borrowed his shotgun, but had not returned it. According to Kevin, William had said he wanted to borrow the shotgun to go to the woods and relieve some stress. After hearing Kevin's statement, the police began to focus their attention on William and Michelle. From the day Anna died, William had been acting strangely and suspiciously. Following the death of his fiancée, Mr. William Hargrove was witnessed displaying unusual behavior. He withdrew funds from her bank account and spent them on items such as cigars and Star Wars Legos. He justified these purchases to his friend Kevin by saying he was trying to alleviate his grief. However, this behavior was compounded and Mr. Hargrove began researching time travel, even going so far as to offer his soul in exchange for the opportunity to travel back in time. When asked why he wanted to travel back in time, Mr. Hargrove explained that he wanted to return to April 16th to prevent his friend from making a mistake. However, this claim appears dubious, as on the same date, Mr. Hargrove was recorded crying in the arms of a store employee, claiming his girlfriend had left him. This raises doubts about the sincerity of his claim, particularly as he had been living with Michelle, despite her not being his anymore. William was taken into custody by the police and questioned. Initially, they asked him about his whereabouts on April 16th. William stated that he had gone for a drive with Michelle. However, when questioned about his relationship with Anna, William claimed they were just acquaintances, having met while walking in downtown Corvallis. He told the police that they had gone on 2 dates, but he had made it clear to her that he wasn't interested in pursuing a romantic relationship. According to William, he last saw Anna in mid-March. He also mentioned that Anna had mistakenly posted about their engagement on Facebook, which caused tension with his actual partner, Michelle. The police then asked William about the trash found near the area where his acquaintance, Anna, was last seen. William admitted to littering, but claimed that he had disposed of his trash, including KFC waste and a trash can. Lieutenant Chris Duffett, one of the investigators who questioned William Hargrove, revealed that trash that implicated him had been found near Anna's body. Initially, William pretended to be shocked and distressed upon hearing this. However, his demeanor quickly changed and he requested a lawyer. Despite denying any involvement, William was arrested on April 19th, 2 days after the body of Anna Rybkina was discovered. Following William's arrest, Michelle was also brought in for questioning. When questioned about her whereabouts on April 16th, Michelle provided a rehearsed alibi, stating that she and William spent the day driving together after he picked her up from her mother's house. However, her story changed later as she admitted to lying initially. She then claimed that William had planned to call and pick her up, but never followed through. During the interrogation, the police revealed shocking information to Michelle. Her boyfriend of a year and a half was now in custody for murder. Her initial reaction was surprisingly calm, but when the investigator pointed out her unusual reaction, Michelle's emotions finally surfaced. William was facing serious charges, including murder, identity theft, and 2 counts of theft. His trial began in October 2019, nearly a year after his indictment in June 2018. The prosecution was pushing for the maximum penalty, presenting a strong case against William with evidence and a clear motive. However, the defense argued that William was innocent and that Michelle, his scorned lover, was the real culprit. Evidence suggested that William had a motive to commit the crime, as he was being pressured by another lover to choose between Anna and Michelle. Additionally, records showed that William and Anna had driven together in the same car on the day of the murder. Furthermore, cell phone records placed William near the crime scene at 4:30 p.m. on the day of the murder, near Logging Road. The gun used to kill Anna was discovered in William's car, with only his fingerprints on it. William was using Anna's money to go shopping and pay his car insurance. He was even caught withdrawing cash from an ATM using her card. According to the prosecution, William had driven Anna to a secluded forest area where he killed her with his shotgun in a deliberate and calculated manner. The motive, they argued, was that William had to choose between Anna and Michelle, and he chose to eliminate Anna. Michelle explained how she met William and the nature of their relationship. She was a late-night cab driver, and her husband was a university instructor. However, their marriage was loveless. One evening, she met William at the bar where he worked. She began a romantic relationship with him. Over time, they grew extremely close, and William even rented a room in her house to be nearer to her. Michelle and William had an open relationship. When Anna first appeared, Michelle was not worried. However, when Anna visited more often, Michelle felt threatened, especially when she saw her wedding ring on Anna's finger. Michelle forced William to choose between her or Anna, but she insisted that she had nothing to do with William's actions that hurt Anna. She stressed that she never intended for Anna to be hurt or worse, killed. Michelle addressed the defense's allegations against her. She explained that the building a snowman threat was a joke, albeit an extreme one. She admitted that her cell phone was found in the forest, but claimed that William had driven her there without her knowledge of his intentions. Finally, Michelle stated that William had given her Anna's cell phone the day before he was questioned by authorities, and she had kept it for him because he was her partner. After nearly a month of court appearances, the judge requested a verdict from the jury. Deliberations took under 3 hours, and ultimately, the defense was unable to link Michelle to Anna's death. Unlike William, Michelle had no forensic evidence tying her to the crime scene or the weapon. Multiple witnesses corroborated her alibi, confirming that she was at her mother's house celebrating Easter at the time of the incident. William pleaded not guilty, but due to overwhelming evidence, he was found guilty of all charges and sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole in 25 years. His lawyer indicated that they would file an appeal. The case of Laci Peterson. Laci Peterson was born on May 4, 1975, to Sharon and Dennis. However, her parents' marriage was short-lived, and they divorced when Laci and her older brother Brent were still young. Following the divorce, Laci's life changed with the introduction of her stepfather, Ron. As a dairy farmer, Ron became a significant influence in Laci's life, serving as a father figure and helping to raise her. Laci was a bright and cheerful person, known for her captivating smile and lively personality. She was a social butterfly, always eager to engage in conversations and thrive in social situations. Laci growing up on a dairy farm, Laci has a strong connection to nature. She spends a lot of time exploring and enjoying the natural beauty around her. One of her favorite activities was gardening with her mother. This shared hobby would eventually shape Laci's interests and career path as an adult. Laci was a student at Thomas Downey High School, where she was a cheerleader and made a lasting impression with her outgoing personality. After graduating, she attended California Polytechnic University, where she studied ornamental horticulture. During her time at Cal Poly, Laci would often visit a friend who worked at a restaurant in Morro Bay. It was there that she met Scott Peterson, a co-worker of her friends. Laci was immediately attracted to Scott and decided to take the initiative by giving him her phone number. Scott quickly responded, and they had an instant connection during their first conversation. They were eager to meet in person, and Scott asked Laci out on a date. Their first date was a deep-sea fishing trip, but it didn't go as smoothly as they had hoped. Laci became seasick during the outing, which put a damper on their initial encounter. Laci and Scott's relationship continued to blossom despite a rocky start. As they grew closer, they decided to take a significant step and move in together. Before meeting Laci, Scott had aspirations of becoming a professional golfer. But as their relationship deepened, his priorities shifted, and he chose to focus on a career in business instead. After Laci graduated from Cal Poly in 1997, Scott graduated the following year. Their graduation marked the beginning of an exciting new chapter in their lives. They married on August 9, 1997, in a beautiful ceremony at a resort in San Luis Obispo County's Ayala Valley. Surrounded by friends and family, they exchanged vows and celebrated their love. Following their wedding, Lacey and Scott embarked on a new venture together, opening a sports bar called The Shack in San Luis Obispo, California. Although business was initially slow, they persevered, and over time, they began to attract a steady stream of customers. Weekends at The Shack were always packed. After many years of success, Lacey and Scott made the difficult decision to sell the bar in 2000. Although the bar was a good source of income, they felt it was time to move on and explore new opportunities. After weighing their options, they sold The Shack and moved to Lacey's hometown of Modesto, California. In October 2000, Lacey and Scott bought a 3-bedroom, 2-bath home in a desirable neighborhood. After the move, Lacey took a part-time job as a substitute teacher, while Scott worked for a European fertilizer company called Branch. Lacey and Scott's life was thriving, with Lacey excelling in domestic duties, making their home warm and inviting. In 2002, they received the wonderful news that they were going to have a baby, with the due date set for February 10, 2003. They was overjoyed to discover they were having a boy and had already chosen the name Connor. Their happiness was short-lived, however. On December 24, 2002, Scott departed for a fishing trip at the Berkeley Marina, leaving Lacey behind at 9:30 a.m. Scott noticed Lacey was missing after he finished showering. He had previously been fishing and had showered and washed his clothes as soon as he got home. When he couldn't find Lacey, he became worried and contacted her mother and stepfather, Sharon and Ron. However, neither of them had heard from her all day. As the hours passed and Lacey remained missing, Scott and Sharon decided to file a missing persons report with the police around 6 p.m. They stressed to the police the urgency of the situation, explaining that Lacey was 7 months pregnant with their unborn son, Connor. The police began questioning Scott about his activities on the day of Lacey's disappearance. According to Scott, he had gone fishing at the Berkeley Marina, which is about 90 miles from their home in Modesto. However, the police had suspicions of foul play in Lacey's disappearance from the very beginning of their investigation. During the initial search for Lacey, the police were not suspicious of her disappearance. Lacey's family publicly defended her husband Scott, as they had seemed perfect. However, as the investigation continued, police interest in Scott grew. Nearly a month after Lacey's disappearance, a shocking discovery was made about Scott. Investigators discovered that while married to Lacey, Scott had been cheating on Lacey, having a long-term affair with a woman named Amber Fry. Amber Fry first contacted police on December 30, 2002. She told them that she had been having an affair with Scott Peterson, Lacey's missing husband. Amber claimed that she had met Scott on November 20, 2002, and initially believed that he was single. However, Scott had told Amber just 2 weeks before Lacey's disappearance that he was a widower, suggesting he would be spending his first holiday season without his wife. This revelation raised suspicions among the police, who wondered if Scott had already planned to murder his pregnant wife. To gather evidence, the police asked Amber to call Scott while being recorded, hoping to capture a potential confession. The police also informed Lacey's family about Scott's infidelity. After learning about Scott's infidelity, Lacey's family publicly withdrew their support for him. Meanwhile, a massive search effort was underway to find Lacey. The search was a collaborative effort between law enforcement, Lacey's loved ones, and hundreds of volunteers. Over 900 people participated in the search during the first 2 days alone. A police officer working on the case expressed skepticism that Lacey had left her home voluntarily on December 24, 2002. Lacey's disappearance shocked the media, capturing public attention with the story of a pregnant wife who went missing on Christmas Eve. Initially, a $5,000 reward was offered for information leading to her safe return, but as time passed with no leads, the reward was increased to $500,000 to raise awareness and gather information. Posters of Lacey were displayed prominently in Modesto, California, and a friend's husband created a website to help spread the word about her disappearance. On April 13, 2003, a couple walking their dog at Richmond's Point Isabel Regional Shoreline Park made a disturbing discovery in a marshy area of the San Francisco Bay. They found the decomposing body of a male infant. The next day, another person discovered the body of a pregnant woman on the shore of the east side of the bay, about a mile away from where the baby was found. DNA tests confirmed on April 18, 2003, that the bodies were those of Lacey Peterson and her unborn son, Connor. They were buried at Wood Cemetery. The autopsy revealed that the baby had 1.5 loops of nylon tape around his neck and a significant cut on his body. Lacey's autopsy showed that Lacey had 2 cracked ribs, her upper torso had been disemboweled, and her head and limbs were missing. The medical examiner determined that the baby died in the womb and was expelled from Lacey's body after her death. Agents from the FBI and the Modesto Police Department searched the home of Scott and Lacey Peterson, looking for evidence that might link them to Lacey's disappearance. During the search, they found the hair caught in Scott's pliers on his fishing boat. The FBI analyzed the hair and matched it to Lacey's DNA. In addition to the home search, the FBI also investigated Scott's truck and warehouse for any signs of evidence. They also examined Scott's boat, where they found a homemade anchor made with a 90-pound bag of concrete. Scott claimed he used the concrete to repair his driveway, but investigators believed he had actually made multiple anchors, using them to weigh down Lacey's body in the San Francisco Bay. The police identified the bodies found in the San Francisco Bay as Lacey and Connor. This led to Scott's arrest near a golf course. At the time of his arrest, Scott's appearance had changed significantly, as his dark brown hair was now blonde. A search of his vehicle revealed a large amount of cash, $115,000, as well as survival gear, camping equipment, and 4 cell phones. The police also found 2 driver's licenses, one belonging to Scott and the other linked to his brother. This evidence suggested that Scott was planning to escape the state. Scott's father provided an alternative explanation for the driver's license found in Scott's car. According to his father, Scott had borrowed his brother's license to get a discount at the golf course. The father also explained that Scott's car was packed with belongings because Scott was living out of his car to avoid the media attention surrounding his case. A year after his arrest, Scott's trial began in June 2004. During the opening arguments, the prosecution presented its case, claiming that Scott's affair with Amber was the motive for Lacey's murder. The prosecution highlighted Scott's suspicious behavior before and after Lacey's disappearance, including inconsistencies in his alibi. Initially, Scott told police he was fishing on the day Lacey went missing, but later told others he was golfing. The prosecution also pointed out that Scott asked police if they had used cadaver dogs to search a park where Lacey walked their dog, suggesting that Scott was aware of the potential crime scene and trying to cover his tracks. In response, Scott's defense team presented a strong argument. They acknowledged Scott's history of infidelity but argued that it did not necessarily make him guilty of murder. They claimed that Scott would not ruin his life for someone he had only dated a few times. The defense suggested that a possible explanation for Lacey's hair being found in Scott's boat was a previous visit to the marina with Lacey. Other witnesses, including a realtor and a salesman, testified that Scott was actively trying to sell their home and trade in Lacey's car, respectively, in the months following her disappearance. The prosecution presented this evidence as proof of Scott's guilt. Additionally, Amber, Scott's mistress, testified about their affair, and the jury listened to secretly recorded phone calls between they. During Scott's trial, a hydrologist and a tidal expert testified that it was possible for Lacey's body to have been dumped in the area where Scott claimed to have been fishing on the day she disappeared. However, the defense argued that there was not enough credible evidence to link Scott directly to the crime. They proposed an alternative theory that someone had kidnapped Lacey on Christmas Eve 2002, held her captive until she gave birth, and then disposed of both bodies in the San Francisco Bay. Scott's attorney emphasized that there was no direct evidence connecting Scott to the crime and suggested that other suspects could have been responsible. On November 12, 2004, the jury in California found Scott guilty of 2 counts of murder: first-degree murder for Lacey's death and second-degree murder for the death of their unborn son, Connor. Lacey's murder was classified as first-degree murder with special circumstances due to the involvement of the fetus. Scott's classification made him eligible for the death penalty. After his conviction, the trial's penalty phase began, focusing on determining his punishment. The jury considered his criminal history, aggravating factors, and mitigating factors before unanimously deciding on the death penalty. In August 2020, the California court upheld Scott's conviction but vacated his death sentence, with the judge ordering Scott to be resentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. As a result, Scott was transferred from San Quentin State Prison, where he had been on death row, to Mule Creek State Prison in Ione, California, on the judge's order. In response to Lacey's case, President George W. Bush signed the Unborn Victims of Violence Act into law on April 1, 2004. Lacey's mother and stepfather attended the signing ceremony, standing alongside President George W. Bush as the legislation took effect. This law, also known as Lacey and Connor's Law, aimed to provide legal protection for unborn children in cases where their mothers are victims of violence. The case of Chris Watts. Shanann and Chris Watts. The two met in 2012 and were both from North Carolina, with Shanann from Aberdeen and Chris from Spring Lake. They got married on November 3, 2012. Chris's parents, Cindy and Ronnie Watts, did not attend the wedding due to their strained relationship with Shanann. Cindy later explained that she didn't get along with Shanann and felt she treated her son poorly. After a year of marriage, Shanann and Chris made a significant decision to buy a new home in Frederick, Colorado. This move marked a new beginning for the couple as they started their life together in their new home. Shanann's lifelong dream of becoming a mother finally came true on December 17, 2013, with the birth of her daughter, Bella. 2 years later, on July 17, 2015, she welcomed her second daughter, Celeste. Those who knew Shanann described her as a kind and compassionate person who radiated love and positivity. She always strived to create the best life for herself and her family. As a mother, Shanann loved her 2 daughters, Bella and Celeste, more than anything in the world. Shanann was devoted to providing her children with the care and support they needed to thrive. Bella, the older of the 2 sisters, was a compassionate and caring child who naturally took on a protector role with her younger sister Celeste. From a young age, Bella showed a strong desire to look out for Celeste's well-being. Celeste, on the other hand, was a lively and energetic child who brought joy and laughter to everyone around her. Shanann was active on social media, using it to share videos that showcased her personality in daily life. Her friends and family enjoyed these videos, which often featured her husband Chris and their daughters. In her posts, Shanann frequently expressed her deep love and gratitude for Chris. While Shanann's loved ones admire their happy marriage, they also noticed that Chris tends to be reserved and not easily approachable. However, because Shanann clearly loves him, they respect his presence in Shanann's life. In June 2015, Shanann and Chris Watts faced severe financial difficulties and decided to file for bankruptcy. The couple struggled with a large mortgage, car payments, loans, and medical bills, in addition to a substantial amount of credit card debt. At the time, Chris worked at Anadarko Petroleum, while Shanann was employed at a hospital call center. A year later, In 2016, Shannon began a new career as a consultant for a multi-level marketing company called Lavelle, where she sold a nutritional supplement called Thrive, which was delivered through a patch. Her colleagues say Shannon is passionate about her work, with one colleague describing her as having a charisma that makes everyone feel welcome and supported. Although Shannon was happy with her life with Chris and their 2 daughters, she had always dreamed of having a 3rd child, a baby boy, to complete their family. Her wish was granted in spring 2018, when she discovered she was pregnant for the 3rd time. Elated by the news, Shannon planned a surprise for Chris. She waited for him to return home on May 28. Chris walked into the room, not knowing the surprise that awaited him. When Shannon revealed that she was pregnant with a baby boy. After hearing the news, both Chris and Shannon were overwhelmed with joy. They decided to name their unborn child Nico. During the summer of 2018, while pregnant with Nico, Shannon visits her family in North Carolina. Chris stays behind in Colorado for work. While in North Carolina, Shannon takes her daughters to visit Chris's parents, Cindy and Ronnie. During the visit, Cindy offers Celeste a snack. Despite knowing that Celeste has a severe nut allergy, Cindy gives Celeste a snack containing peanuts. This incident upsets Shannon, who feels that Cindy has put Celeste's life in danger. Shannon was upset and sent a text message to Chris expressing her frustration. She told him he should call his dad and tell him how he felt about his mom putting their daughter's safety at risk that day. Shannon believed Chris's mom was trying to upset her by taking risks with their child's life. While Shannon was visiting family in North Carolina, she noticed a change in Chris's communication style. He stopped responding to her messages and calls, which left her confused. When she asked him about it, Chris said he was busier at work due to new employees and that everything was fine. Despite his reassurance, Chris's sudden lack of communication concerned Shannon. On July 31st, Chris flew from Colorado to North Carolina to join Shannon and their daughters, Bella and Celeste, for the week. The girls were excited to see their dad, and as soon as Chris stepped off the plane, they ran to him, eager for hugs. Chris picked them up and held them tightly. Chris's behavior toward Shannon was clearly different. He didn't greet her with a kiss, just a nod of acknowledgement. Shannon felt hurt and couldn't understand why Chris would act this way. She opened up to a friend via text message, expressing her concern that Chris had changed. Shannon's texts were filled with sadness and confusion. She told her friend that Chris was ignoring her, and they were barely communicating, even when they were in the same room. Instead of talking face-to-face, they were exchanging messages on their phones. Shannon even sent a picture to her friend, showing her and Chris sitting on separate couches, facing away from each other. In her messages, Shannon revealed her suspicions that Chris might be having an affair. Shannon confided in her friend that Chris had told her he no longer believed they were compatible, which left her heartbroken. Desperate to save their family, she proposed that they seek couples counseling to work through their issues. She was willing to make concessions and put in the effort to repair their relationship. However, Chris refused to consider counseling. Shannon soon realized that Chris was not willing to meet her halfway or make any compromises. Despite her efforts to save their relationship, Shannon came to understand that Chris was not interested in finding common ground or working through their problems together. After returning to Colorado from a trip to North Carolina, Shannon, Chris, and their daughters settled back into their normal routine. However, Shannon's return was short-lived, as she soon left for a business trip to Arizona. While in Arizona, Shannon's friends noticed a change in her behavior. She seemed anxious and upset, rather than her usual happy self. One evening, Shannon opened up to her friends in their hotel room, sharing her concerns. She told them that Chris had expressed doubts about their relationship and refused to attend couples therapy. On August 11th, While Shannon was with her friends in Arizona, she received a notification about a restaurant charge on the credit card account she shared with Chris, which raised her suspicions. She couldn't shake off the feeling that Chris might be seeing someone else. Around 1:48 a.m., Shannon returned home from her business trip. Shannon's close friend Nicole Atkinson drove her home. Footage from their doorbell camera confirmed that Shannon had indeed entered her house on August 13th. However, as the day progressed, Shannon failed to send her usual good morning messages, alarming her friends. A missed OB/GYN appointment scheduled for 9:30 a.m. did little to quell their concerns. However, when Shannon missed another engagement, a 12:30 p.m. business meeting, Nicole's concerns escalated, realizing something was seriously wrong as Shannon was now uncharacteristically incommunicado for the entire day. Nicole had a nagging feeling that something was wrong and decided to drive to Shannon's house. As she approached the house, her anxiety spiked. Shannon's truck was parked in the garage, which was very unusual. Nicole went to Shannon's house and knocked on the front door, hoping Shannon would answer and explain that she was just tired from her flight the day before. But Shannon didn't respond. Nicole contacted Shannon's husband, Chris, to see if he knew where she was. Chris told her not to worry, thinking that Shannon might have taken their daughter to visit a friend. However, this explanation did not make sense. Shannon didn't have any plans to meet up with her friends, and they were starting to get concerned. They told Chris that they were going to report Shannon and their daughters, Bella and Celeste, missing to the police. Chris didn't want to involve the police, but Nicole was worried about her friend and decided to call 911 to report them missing. When the police arrived at Shannon and Chris's house, an officer from the Frederick Police Department spoke with Nicole. The officer's body cam footage showed that Nicole was clearly distraught about her missing friend. As Nicole was explaining everything she knew about Shannon and her daughters, Chris arrived at the house. However, unlike Nicole, he didn't seem particularly worried about their disappearance. During the search of the house, the officer found Shannon's purse, which was surprising since she and her daughters were missing. Inside the purse, the officer discovered medication for Shannon and her two daughters, which added to the concern. The discovery of the purse made Nicole even more anxious, but Chris remained calm. The officer also found Shannon's wedding ring, left on the bedside table, which seemed unusual given the circumstances. The officer and Chris then went to a neighbor's house to review footage from their security camera. The camera's angle captured part of the driveway and garage of Shannon and Chris's house, which might provide some clues. Chris can be seen on footage opening the garage door and leaving his home at 5:28 a.m. While reviewing the footage, Chris's behavior changed dramatically, appearing nervous and agitated. His neighbor even commented on Chris's unusual behavior, expressing doubts to the officer about Chris's actions. Chris's reluctance to join the search for his missing wife, Shannon, and their daughters, Bella and Celeste, raised concerns with Shannon's friends. They found it incomprehensible that Chris was not worried about his family's disappearance. As the investigation continued, officers went door to door in the neighborhood, asking residents if they had seen Shannon or anything out of the ordinary. The search for Shannon, Bella, and Celeste intensified the next day, with the FBI and the Colorado Bureau of Investigation joining the effort. The Boulder Police Department also provided cadaver dogs to aid in the search, both on the property and inside the house. As officers searched the home, one handler observed that the house had a strong smell of cleaning solutions and appeared unusually clean. This sparked suspicion, prompting the officers to take a closer look. The presence of cleaning solutions suggested that someone may have attempted to conceal evidence or erase potential clues. Meanwhile, Chris gave an interview to a news station outside his home. He insisted that he and Shannon had not argued before she went missing and expressed his wish for his family to return home safely. Chris expressed his longing to be reunited with his family, stating that his house felt incomplete without them. However, his behavior during the interview raised suspicions. Despite his emotional words, Chris appeared detached and unemotional, which puzzled those who knew him. Shannon's friends who watched the interview felt his behavior was inconsistent with his pleas for his family to return, and that only added to their concerns. On August 14th, Agent Coder interviewed Chris again. During the conversation, Chris suggested that Shannon may have taken the girls to a friend's house to relax. Meanwhile, the police department had received multiple reports of possible sightings of Shannon and her two daughters. Chris was shown various photographs, but he was unable to identify any of the individuals as his missing wife and daughters. Agent Coder also asked Chris about his marriage to Shannon. Chris claimed that he had never been unfaithful to Shannon and, to his knowledge, she had never cheated on him either. During an interview with Agent Coder, Chris exhibited suspicious behavior, frequently touching his neck with his hands. This caught Agent Coder's attention. The lack of updates from the authorities only intensified the family's desperation. After a 3-hour interrogation, Chris was released from the police department, but he was asked to return the following day, August 15th, for a polygraph test, to which he agreed. On August 15th, Chris picked up his father from the airport and then drove to the Frederick Police Department, where he was scheduled to take a polygraph test. The test was administered by Tammy Lee, a polygraph expert from the Colorado Bureau of Investigation. During the test, Chris denied any involvement in his wife Shannon's disappearance and claimed he had no knowledge of her whereabouts. However, his test results showed a score of -8, which was significantly lower than the -4 score needed to pass. This outcome led detectives to believe that Chris was responsible for the deaths of his wife and daughters. Tammy Lee, the polygraph expert, confronted Chris about his failed test results. Chris admitted to causing Shannon emotional pain, but denied physically harming her. He also confessed to having an affair with a coworker and expressed regret for his infidelity. However, he continued to deny any involvement in his family's disappearance. Later in the interview, Chris asked to speak to his father, Ronnie. The officers hesitated, worried that Ronnie's presence might cause Chris to ask for a lawyer. However, they let Ronnie into the interrogation room, hoping that Ronnie's presence might encourage Chris to confess. When Ronnie arrived, Chris told his father that he had killed Shannon, claiming that he did so because Shannon had harmed their daughters, Bella and Celeste. The detectives did not believe for a moment that Shannon had hurt her daughters. Chris eventually confessed to burying Shannon in a shallow grave at one of his work sites and disposing of the bodies of their daughters in oil tanks. Chris pleaded guilty to avoid the death penalty and was sentenced to life in prison without parole. At his sentencing hearing, the judge stated that Chris's crimes were the most inhumane and brutal he had ever seen. The case of Mary Catherine Higdon. Mary Catherine Higdon, born in 1994, was a lively child known for her sense of humor and ability to make others laugh with her witty remarks and impersonations. She enjoyed spending time outdoors and exploring nature, often taking walks around town with her pet frog perched on a shoestring. This early exposure to the natural world instilled in her a deep love and respect for the environment and animals. Mary was also a talented and creative performer. She regularly performed for her family in homemade plays, showing off her vivid imagination and ability to attract attention on stage. Her family recognized her natural talent and envisioned a bright future for her. As she grew older, Mary developed another passion, that was firearms. Under proper guidance, she learned to handle guns responsibly, respecting their power and potential. Through dedication and practice, Mary became a skilled marksman during her high school years. Mary Catherine met the love of her life, Stephen Freeman, who was born on January 1, 1995, in Griffin, Georgia. He was raised in a close-knit family with his parents and brother. As a child, Stephen was known to be happy and friendly, with many friends who described him as laid-back, kind, and helpful. Those who knew him said he genuinely cared for everyone around him. Stephen had a deep appreciation for nature and enjoyed spending time outdoors. Their love for nature led them to enjoy activities like hiking, camping, fishing, and hunting together. This shared interest laid the groundwork for their robust relationship. After graduating from high school, they started a new chapter in their lives. As high school sweethearts, they decided to take their relationship to the next level by moving into a house together in Griffin, Georgia. Living in their own space excited Mary Catherine and Stephen. Stephen's mother welcomed Mary Catherine as more than just her son's partner. She genuinely considered her a daughter and accepted her into their family. Mary Catherine and Stephen visited Stephen's parents every Sunday for a big family dinner, a tradition that strengthened their bond and cemented Mary Catherine's place within the family. Stephen's friends initially had reservations about his relationship with Mary Catherine. However, as they spent more time together, they grew to appreciate how well-suited Mary Catherine and Stephen was. Mary Catherine brought happiness and joy into Stephen's life, and her love for Stephen was admirable. Stephen worked as a metal worker and repaired roofs, while Mary Catherine was a part-time teacher's assistant at a preschool in Milner, Georgia. She also worked at a sporting goods store, where she sold guns and learned about basic gun safety, including how to hold, load, and shoot a gun. This experience was shared with Stephen, who owned several firearms, including shotguns and rifles, which he used for hunting and target practice. He also kept a Glock 42 at home for protection. By the summer of 2018, Mary Catherine and Stephen had been in a relationship for 5 years and were still living together in their apartment in Griffin, Georgia. However, their happiness was shattered on the night of August 1st when Mary Catherine made a frantic 911 call. When the dispatcher answered, Mary Catherine cried out that she had accidentally shot her boyfriend. The police quickly arrived at the apartment and found Mary Catherine in a state of distress. Mary Catherine, hysterical and overcome with grief, cried and hyperventilated as she knelt beside Stephen's lifeless body, repeatedly screaming, "I cannot lose him." Her voice was filled with anguish and despair. As the police gently moved Mary Catherine away from Stephen, they were able to assess his condition. They found that he had been shot in the chest but was still alive. An ambulance was called to rush Stephen to the hospital, where doctors worked to save his life. Despite the medical team's best efforts, Stephen's condition continued to worsen, and he eventually passed away due to the severity of his injuries. Mary Catherine accompanied the police to the police department for a formal interview after Stephen was taken to the hospital. She began by recounting the events of the night that led to her accidentally shooting Stephen. According to Mary Catherine, she was handing Stephen the gun because he usually kept it on the side of his bed at night for safety. However, she stated that they never kept a bullet in the magazine of the guns. During the interview, the police noticed the smell of alcohol on Mary Catherine's breath. As the questioning continued, Mary Catherine's story about the shooting changed. Initially, she said she handed the gun to Stephen, but later claimed she tossed it to him instead. The police were skeptical about her story, knowing that the gun would not fire randomly when thrown, and someone must have pulled the trigger. Furthermore, the location of Stephen's gunshot wound led the police to believe that Mary Catherine must have been pointing the gun directly at him for the bullet to strike where it did. At one point during the interview, Mary Catherine said she shot Stephen out of anger. However, due to technical issues, only feedback was recorded during this part of the conversation, despite the police recording the entire interview. The police believed they had sufficient forensic evidence to prove that Mary Catherine deliberately shot her boyfriend Stephen, even without a crucial part of the recording. At their apartment, investigators found signs of a heated argument before the shooting. The presence of scattered food throughout the house indicated that an altercation had taken place. Additionally, it was found that police officers had visited the house of Mary and Stephen 5 times in the past year due to domestic disputes. The police also discovered evidence that the gun used to shoot Stephen was loaded on the night of the incident, contradicting Mary Catherine's claims. Furthermore, cooking grease was also found on both the gun and the magazine. This discovery led the police to conclude that Mary Catherine, who was cooking dinner at the time, had loaded the gun. After Mary Catherine shot Stephen, the police interviewed his friends to gather information about their relationship. According to Stephen's friends, the relationship between Mary Catherine and Stephen was toxic and marked by constant arguing. They reported that Mary Catherine and Stephen frequently had heated confrontations. Stephen's friends reported that Mary Catherine was extremely possessive and verbally abusive towards him. They claimed she showed signs of mental instability, which made their relationship increasingly tense. Whenever Stephen tried to take some space and leave their apartment, Mary Catherine would bombard him with texts and calls, forcing him to block her. One friend revealed that Stephen had confided in him about Mary Catherine pulling a gun on him at least 3 times in the past. Stephen didn't report incidents to the police because he worried Mary Catherine would get in trouble. His primary concern was her well-being, even when his own safety was at risk. When his friends found out that Mary Catherine accidentally shot Stephen, they struggled to believe it since she knew how to handle a firearm. 3 months before the shooting, Stephen told a friend that Mary Catherine was behaving erratically, screaming outside, and trying to shoot both him and herself. A month later, Stephen confided in another friend that Mary Catherine had pointed a gun at him before, but the most recent incident made him genuinely fear she would follow through. By July 2018, Stephen was exhausted with Mary Catherine's behavior and considered leaving her after 7 years together. He planned to secretly move to a new town while she was out due to fearing her reaction if she knew. Police later discovered text messages from July 30, 2018, 2 days before Mary Catherine fatally shot Stephen. The first text message sent by Stephen to Mary Catherine on July 30 read, "Good morning, beautiful. Don't forget." Mary Catherine responded with, "Have a great day." Stephen then replied, "You too. Love you." However, the police found that the following night, July 31st, Stephen spent the evening at a friend's house and did not return Mary Catherine's texts or calls because they was fighting. On the night of the shooting, August 1st, Mary Catherine was at home preparing dinner, but Stephen was not there. She reached out to Stephen's mother. She informed her that Stephen was with his friend. Angry at Stephen, Mary Catherine started driving to his friend's house. As she drove, she spotted Stephen sitting in the passenger seat of his friend's truck. Mary Catherine pulled alongside Stephen's friend and started yelling at Stephen. Stephen tried to calm Mary Catherine down, assuring her that he was on his way home. Mary Catherine allegedly pointed a gun at Stephen multiple times, according to his friends. However, Mary strongly denied these claims, stating she never pulled a gun on him. On another hand, Mary Catherine did admit to threatening to take her own life with a gun on several occasions. Stephen's mother believed that he stayed with Mary Catherine due to her repeated threats of self-harm, which made Stephen fear for Mary's life if he left. On the night of the incident, Mary Catherine claimed that Stephen became violent, throwing the dinner she prepared in her face. She stated that she picked up the gun for self-defense, trying to scare Stephen away and make him leave the apartment. According to her, Stephen lunged at her, causing her to back away, and the next thing she knew, he was bleeding from the chest. At the time of Stephen's shooting, Mary Catherine did not tell the police about Stephen's history of violence towards her because she was embarrassed. According to Mary Catherine, Stephen had been violent and controlling in the past, even kicking her out of bed with enough force to make her hit her head on the door frame. However, Stephen's friends had a different perspective on the relationship. They claimed to have witnessed Mary Catherine hitting Stephen, including one instance where she slapped him hard in the face. On the other hand, Mary Catherine's sister had a different view of their relationship. She reported seeing bruises on Mary Catherine's arm 2 weeks before Stephen was shot. When she asked Mary Catherine about the bruises, Mary Catherine said that Stephen had grabbed her. After investigating Stephen's death, the police concluded that it was a murder. As a result, Mary Catherine was charged with murder, aggravated assault, and possession of a firearm during the commission of a felony. The state offered Mary Catherine a plea deal and receive a life sentence with the possibility of parole. However, she rejected the offer and chose to went to trial, pleading not guilty and arguing that she shot Stephen in self-defense. The trial began on June 17, 2019, nearly a year after Stephen's death. Mary Catherine's attorneys claimed that she acted in self-defense, citing her genuine fear of Stephen due to his violent and abusive history. They presented evidence of Stephen's controlling, manipulative, and violent behavior to support their case. During the trial, Mary Catherine testified in her own defense, sharing emotional accounts of the constant abuse she suffered at the hands of Stephen. She described a pervasive pattern of physical, mental, emotional, verbal, and sexual abuse, stating that Stephen would frequently hit her, humiliate her, and subject her. Mary Catherine reported that Stephen subjected her to various forms of abuse. She shared instances where he physically and verbally abused her. The abuse had a profound impact on her physical and emotional well-being, leaving her feeling trapped and fearful for her life. During the trial, Mary Catherine's defense presented a text message from Stephen, stating that she would be punished when he returned home. When questioned about the meaning of this message, Mary Catherine explained that Stephen would physically abuse her and demand that she be a better girlfriend. The defense also presented another text message, in which Stephen warned Mary Catherine not to hit him, threatening to retaliate with twice the force. In her testimony, Mary Catherine described a red room where Stephen and Mary Catherine engaged in aggressive and sometimes violent intimacy, likening it to a concept from the popular book series 50 Shades of Grey. Mary's defense attorneys presented a text message from Stephen, which stated, "I miss you too much, I'm coming home, and you're about to get it bad, you're going to the red room." Mary Catherine also testified that Stephen sexually assaulted her on 2 occasions, one of which occurred after they returned from a vacation to Walt Disney World. Mary Catherine reported that their intercourse had become increasingly aggressive, and she expressed her discomfort to Stephen, asking him to stop. However, instead of heeding her pleas, Stephen allegedly intensified his efforts. He claimed that she had received various gifts at Disney World and now owed him what was rightfully his. According to Mary Catherine, Stephen told her that she had to give him what he wanted and what he deserved. The defense presented additional evidence in the form of text messages from Stephen to support Mary Catherine's claims of abuse. These messages were vulgar, threatening, and demonstrated a pattern of verbal assaults directed towards Mary Catherine. The defense had over 60 pages of text messages from Stephen that showcased his abusive behavior. One particular image sent while Stephen was out with a group of friends was particularly disturbing. In the image, Stephen was holding a large dead fish aloft with the caption, "This is you." Another message from Stephen to Mary Catherine, after she cheated on him, read that he would wreck her for her wrecking him. The defense also alleged that Stephen struggled with addiction to drugs and alcohol, which led to violent outbursts. During the conversation about the night Mary Catherine shot Stephen, she claimed that she ended their relationship, not Stephen. According to Mary Catherine, Stephen did not take the breakup and acted like he was going to attack her. Fearing for her safety, she grabbed a gun in self-defense. Mary Catherine stated that the last words she exchanged with Stephen before shooting him were, "Get out of my house." However, Stephen's friends and family disagreed with Mary Catherine's portrayal of him as violent. abusive, and dangerous. They described him as laid-back, friendly, and caring. His mother stated she was unaware of Stephen sending Mary Catherine disturbing text messages or threatening violence. While she did not condone such behavior, she believed Stephen only acted out of anger. During cross-examination, the state questioned Mary Catherine about never reporting the alleged abuse by Stephen. The state also pointed out that hours before the shooting, Mary Catherine had been searching for violent and sexually explicit images online while babysitting. Mary Catherine claimed she was looking at those sites to get ideas to make Stephen happy and convince him to stay with her. The state noted that Mary Catherine had altered her story about the night of the shooting at least 10 times since her initial interview a year prior to the trial. A crucial piece of evidence presented in court to support the prosecution's theory that Mary Catherine intentionally shot Stephen was a text message he sent her. The message stated that she had pointed a gun at him multiple times before, and the last incident had scared him. Additionally, Stephen's friends testified in court, sharing their accounts of witnessing Mary Catherine's abuse towards him. Their testimonies corroborated the prosecution's argument that Mary Catherine had a history of violence against Stephen, contradicting her claims that he was the abuser. After deliberating for 4 hours, the jury delivered a verdict of not guilty on the charges of malice murder, felony murder, assault, and possession of a firearm in the commission of a felony. As a result, Mary Catherine was released from prison. The verdict shocked Stephen's loved ones, who were stunned by the decision. In a later admission, members of the jury revealed that they believed Mary Catherine had intentionally shot and killed Stephen. However, they acknowledged that there was insufficient evidence to prove beyond a reasonable doubt why she had shot him. This lack of evidence made it challenging to determine whether the shooting was murder or justified as self-defense. The jury was also unable to reach a consensus on the validity of all the accusations against both Stephen and Mary Catherine. The case of Shanynthia Gardner. Shanynthia Gardner was born in the late 1980s in Memphis, Tennessee. Not much is known about her early life. She is the daughter of Eleanor Snodgrass from Madison, Alabama. Shanynthia was a slim, beautiful brunette with curly hair as a child. Shanynthia was a multi-talented person. Her creative spirit was evident in her songwriting abilities, which helped her become a local celebrity. Shanynthia also has a keen eye for fashion and photography, attends church regularly, and spends time with her family. Shanynthia seems well-rounded and full of promise for a bright future. Shanynthia met Daryl Clayton when she was 14 years old. They became close friends. As they grew up and graduated from high school, their friendship turned into love. Shanynthia and Daryl often spent time together. In 2008, Daryl was accused of assaulting a woman, albeit unintentionally, which led to charges being filed against him. Fortunately for him, the charges were eventually dropped. Shanynthia and Daryl did not get married, but they decided to live together as a couple. In 2008, they had a son named Kason. Shanynthia took on a motherly role, not only to her own son but also to Daryl's 2 children from a previous relationship. Shanynthia was a devoted mother and caring partner, which made her special to those around her. Although Shanintia's relationship with Daryl did not last long, to Daryl, Shanynthia remained a loving wife and mother. Her life took a new turn when Shanynthia married Martin Gardner, the man who brought her joy and gave her a stable life. Shanynthia won Martin over with her kindness, love for children, and gentle nature. Their relationship developed quickly, and in September 2013, they decided to start a life together, moving into an apartment complex in southeast Shelby County. Their wedding marked the beginning. Shanynthia and her husband Martin started their family with the arrival of their first child, baby Talon Gardner. Their family grew as little Saya Gardner was born in 2014, followed by two more girls, Savi and Yahtzee. Martin and Shanynthia had 4 children together, in addition to a child from her previous relationship, creating a busy and happy home. Shanynthia prioritizes her family's health and also enjoys her part-time job at the Children's Hospital. Additionally, she supports a charity center that focuses on raising funds to support children. Her compassionate nature fuels her passion to dedicate her life to helping others. On July 1, 2016, Martin had a phone conversation with Shanynthia around noon as she was getting ready to watch a movie with their children. The couple were chatting quietly. Shanynthia suddenly lost control and grabbed a kitchen knife. She walked into the living room, where she brutally attacked her 6-month-old daughter, Yahtzee, without any apparent reason or provocation. The innocent child, unable to defend herself, was tragically killed at the hands of her mother. The eldest child, a 7-year-old boy named Kason, witnessed the horrific scene. Too young to understand the situation, the boy ran away from home. Shanynthia, still armed with the knife, pursued her son out of the house, intent on continuing her violent rampage. The boy's terrified screams caught the attention of nearby neighbors. Realizing that the neighbor had seen Kason, Shanynthia immediately stopped. She returned to the house where Savi and Talon were lying. Upon entering the house, Shanynthia rushed to the bedroom where her young children were lying and rushed to kill them. Neighbors who witnessed the horrific scene quickly contacted the police for assistance, pleading for help in rescuing Kason and his siblings. The police arrived at Shaninthia's home. They found Shanynthia covered in blood, along with her 4 dead children. The scene shocked everyone. Shanynthia, still holding her cell phone in her hand, calmly called her husband Martin and confessed to killing the children. By the time the police arrived, the incident was over, and an eerie silence had fallen over the once happy home of the Shanynthia family. The house was now a scene of horror, with blood stains in every corner. A bloody knife, recovered by the police. When clergy and police arrived to assist, they were confronted with a horrifying reality. The police began gathering information and conducting an investigation. Shanynthia was held without bail and her trial is scheduled for July 5. Michelle Jaiman, Shaninthia's co-worker, defended Shanynthia on social media. Michelle highlighted the possibility of Shanynthia suffering from postpartum depression. Cases like Shaninthia's have sparked discussions about mental illness and such tragic events. Dr. Joel Pellet, a psychiatrist at the University of Tennessee Medical Center, confirmed that mothers killing their children is extremely rare and is usually related to underlying mental health issues. Dr. Diane Barnes, an expert in psychology and postpartum health, made a crucial distinction between postpartum depression and postpartum psychosis. According to her, these are 2 distinct conditions with unique symptoms. Dr. Diane cast doubt on the idea that Shanynthia Gardner was suffering from postpartum depression at the time of her actions. Craig Morton was appointed as Shaninthia's defense attorney. During the July 5, 2016 court hearing, Shanynthia participated via video link, but remained completely silent, not answering any questions from Judge L. Lambert. After the trial, Shanynthia was admitted to a mental health institute. Meanwhile, Morton's attorney and prosecutor Jennifer Nichols were preparing to file a warrant for evidence gathered in the case. In January 2017, Shanynthia faced formal charges on 4 counts, 2 counts of child abuse, 1 count of aggravated murder, and 1 count of child neglect. Her mother, Sonia, was shocked and confused when she learned about the horrific incident and immediately rushed to the scene to find her grandson. Initially, Sonia suspected that Shanynthia and Martin were divorcing, and the prospect of raising 5 children alone may have driven Shanynthia to make the desperate decision. Shaninthia's ex-husband, Kason's father, said, although he was not his son's guardian after the relationship ended, he was still able to visit Kaysen whenever he wanted. However, the last time he saw his son was in November 2014. He noticed that Shaninthia's behavior was becoming more and more extreme. Every time he tried to contact Kaysen, he was unsuccessful. Those close to Shanинthia observed a change in her. She began to feel irritable, which gradually turned into anxiety, paranoia, and panic attacks. Her behavior became erratic and unpredictable, leading many to suspect that she might be suffering from postpartum depression. This change shocked those around her, as Shanинthia had previously been a kind person, and the sudden change in her behavior left many wondering what had led to this tragic situation. The first signs of unusual behavior began in March 2015. Shanинthia Gardner left work and picked up her 5 children. She then drove away from her Memphis home, down an unfamiliar road. Her husband, Martin Gardner, initially thought she had gone for a walk in a nearby park to clear her head. However, as hours passed and Shanинthia did not return home, Martin became concerned and decided to report her missing to the police. He put out an alert for her car, which contained her and their 5 children. Unknown to Martin, Shanинthia had driven more than 74 miles east to Corinth, a place where she had no relatives. She was eventually found in the emergency room of St. Francis Hospital, although the circumstances surrounding her arrival remain unclear. Upon examination, medical staff discovered shallow cuts to Shaninthia's neck and one wrist. It appeared she had attempted to harm herself, leaving many questions unanswered for her young children, who were too young to fully understand the situation. Following her return home, Shaninthia's behavior became increasingly strange. She claimed that someone was threatening her and her family, but she provided no details about the identity of the person or their motives. Martin was shocked, as there had been no previous threats or incidents. Additionally, Shanинthia began expressing dissatisfaction with her job and workload when around family and friends, stating that she felt terrible about it. She eventually started claiming that some of her co-workers were out to harm her. Despite these erratic claims, Shanинthia did not display any signs of violent or abusive behavior towards her children or others. Shanинthia Gardner's trial begins in 2021. Her defense team is focusing on her mental illness. The judge, James of the Shelby County Criminal Court, rejected the defense's argument, and in December 2021, Shanинthia Gardner was found guilty of all charges. Shanинthia Gardner, then 34, was sentenced in February 2022. She received a life sentence for each murder charge and 15 years for each count of child abuse and neglect. Due to Tennessee's laws, Shanинthia Gardner will be eligible for parole after serving a total of 51 years in prison. After the sentencing, the prosecutor expressed his agreement with the decision, stating that it aligned with his goal of achieving justice for Martin and his children. Martin felt a sense of relief knowing that Shanинthia would no longer be able to harm any children. A vigil was held at the apartment complex where the family lived, attended by neighbors, family members, law enforcement officers, and others. Sonia, the grandmother of one of the victims, was among those in attendance. The group lit red and white candles and prayed for the victims. Following the loss, Martin's colleagues set up a social media account to help him prepare for the funeral of his 4 children. During the service, Martin gave an emotional final speech, recalling his home as a place filled with happiness when his children and Shanинthia were present, and expressing his intention to keep that memory alive. The case of Samadhi Fonseca Fernandez. Samadhi Fonseca Fernandez was born in Costa Rica in February 1975. Not much is known about her early family life. Samadhi grew up in Cuba, where she lived with her mother, Sonia Fonseca. She attended a local school. Samadhi often used force or deception to get what she wanted. Samadhi's striking looks and perfect figure make her a magnet, especially to men. Samadhi's beauty and charm are overshadowed by her greed, vanity, and self-interest, which ultimately drives men away. Furthermore, she is extremely jealous and aggressive. Samadhi, due to her youthful resemblance to Barbie, spent several years working at a Universal Company bookstore, dressing up as the iconic doll. After graduating from high school, Samadhi started a long-term relationship with Osvaldo Fernando Ballery, a local television journalist 16 years her senior. Their relationship resulted in the birth of children, Christopher in 1996 and Christina a year later. However, constant arguments and jealousy eventually led Samadhi to end the relationship in 2012. Shortly after, Osvaldo, 53, died suddenly. Osvaldo did not include Samadhi in his will. Samadhi took drastic action and seized Osvaldo's house, changing the locks to prevent relatives and heirs from entering. Samadhi also took away Osvaldo's valuables. Osvaldo's family was furious and took Samadhi to court for theft. Police intervened and forced Samadhi to leave the house, but no criminal charges were filed against her. Samadhi had other relationships, most notably with Miguel Angel Perez, the father of Samadhi's third daughter, Maria. Although some reports claimed the couple were officially married, the relationship ended in divorce after a few years. It was strange that some of Samadhi's lovers disappeared or died mysteriously under mysterious circumstances. But for a long time, for some reason, no one paid any attention to it. Another former lover, Diaco, met a tragic end after breaking up with Samadhi. He was murdered during a robbery. The killers were never caught or brought to justice. As with the previous case, there was much speculation surrounding Samadhi's possible involvement, but there was no solid evidence linking her to the crime. Samadhi's most famous victim was Gerardo Cruz. Gerardo Cruz, a native of Costa Rica, was born in December 1992 in the city of San Jose. Gerardo Cruz lived with his mother, Ana Patricia, who soon married a man named Hermes Rodriguez, who raised Gerardo Cruz as his own son. Gerardo Cruz attended a regular school, developed a passion for motorcycles, and met his future partner, Carol, at a young age. By the time he was 23, Gerardo had settled down with Carol and their 4-year-old daughter, Genesis, in the suburban home of his aunt and uncle in San Sebastian. To support his family, Gerardo Cruz took a job at a local bakery. It was around this time, in the summer of 2015, that Gerardo Cruz met Samadhi, a 40-year-old woman who frequented the bakery. Despite her age, Samadhi was attractive. Samadhi began having affairs with men much younger than herself, because the attention of young lovers probably delighted Samadhi. Gerardo Cruz was one such affair. Despite the significant age difference, Gerardo Cruz quickly fell in love with Samadhi and began to meet secretly. Samadhi came to the bakery every day to see Gerardo Cruz, and other employees took notice of Samadhi's frequent visits. Samadhi would bring his 19-year-old daughter, Christina, with him to the bakery. Initially, Gerardo Cruz was able to balance his family life and secretly date Samadhi without either woman finding out. He eventually let his guard down. He began bragging about his success with women and began sharing stories with friends and colleagues about Samadhi, describing her as a great mistress who showered him with gifts. After just a few months together, in October 2015, Samadhi discovered the truth about Gerardo Cruz having a pregnant wife and a child. Samadhi was so angry that she started calling and texting Carol, Gerardo Cruz's wife, insulting her and threatening to kill Gerardo Cruz if he didn't belong to her. Gerardo Cruz tried to beg Carol's forgiveness. As for Samadhi, he did not take her threat seriously, believing that she would quickly calm down and find a new boyfriend. Just days after breaking up with Samadhi, Gerardo Cruz saw a man secretly filming a young girl's underwear with his phone. Gerardo Cruz filmed the man, stopped the girl, and advised her to report the incident to the police. He then chased the man, trying to capture his face on camera, until the man escaped in a taxi. Gerardo Cruz posted the video online and it quickly went viral. The man was identified as Luis Somano Delgado, a former member of the Ministry of Finance. The media picked up the story, and Gerardo Cruz became a national celebrity, outing Luis Somano Delgado in interviews. However, Luis Somano Delgado's lawyer accused Gerardo Cruz of wrongdoing, claiming that the video's distribution was illegal and preparing to file a lawsuit. Gerardo Cruz was surprised, wondering why he was being prosecuted instead of the man who committed the crime. Gerardo Cruz gave a radio interview confidently, without fear. The next day, he canceled his meeting with Oswald, citing an emergency after receiving a text message from Samadi, supposedly to discuss another interview with a young woman in a park. Unsuspecting, Gerardo Cruz met with her, but instead of journalists, two men stole his bag, beat him, and stabbed him multiple times. Gerardo Cruz called Oswald when he was unconscious, and Oswald called the police and paramedics. Gerardo Cruz was taken to the hospital, where doctors fought to save his life for 42 days. Gerardo Cruz underwent numerous operations, but unfortunately, they were unsuccessful in saving his life. He passed away in the intensive care unit on November 19. Gerardo Cruz's funeral was attended by a large number of people who wanted to express their condolences to his family. The community came together to express their hope that the police would quickly apprehend the perpetrators and bring them to justice. Initially, the investigation explored multiple theories. The first was that Cruz was a victim of a robbery gone wrong. This seemed plausible, given that he was attacked in a park, his bag was stolen, and he was stabbed with a knife. The first theory is that Gerardo Cruz was the victim of a botched robbery, as he was attacked in a park, his bag stolen, and stabbed. However, Gerardo Cruz recently released a video exposing a nationally known former official, which has fueled another theory, that the attack was a revenge killing. The media speculated that the former official, Somano Delgado, may have hired a hitman to silence Gerardo Cruz, who had tarnished his reputation. The murder has sparked widespread debate in the press. Police later identified and tracked down the two men. The footage was made public and shown repeatedly on news programs, with viewers encouraged to watch the footage closely. Soon after, the identity of one suspect was confirmed when he voluntarily surrendered to the police, cooperating with the investigation in hopes of receiving a reduced sentence. The investigation quickly identified several accomplices and organizers of the crime, Samadi and her daughter Cristina, thanks to information provided. Those involved, including taxi driver Ronald Archie, worker Cesar Chavez, a young miner, and Omar Costa, were arrested. The investigation revealed the roles and connections of all those involved in the crime through phone calls and text messages. Samadi was identified as the mastermind, who had carefully planned the murder for his daughter Cristina. They enlisted the help of friends Ronald Archie and Cesar Chavez to find two assassins to kill Gerardo Cruz and stage a robbery in the park at night. Omar Costa later joined the plot, tasked with ensuring Gerardo Cruz was present at the park. Samadi chose October 7th as the date of the massacre. Samadi kept in constant contact with all the suspects, assigning roles and ensuring everyone followed the plan. Furthermore, Samadi asked the participants to take an item from Gerardo Cruz as proof that the crime had been completed. The evidence against Samadi was a series of text messages outlining the murder plan and the roles of each participant in detail. The motive behind the crime was a case of jealousy. She had carefully planned the crime and even involved her own daughter, who assisted her in every step of the process. Both Samadi and her daughter were taken into custody immediately, and the possibility of releasing them on bail was ruled out due to concerns that they would attempt to flee the country. Their accomplices were also detained, except for Omar Costa, who was responsible for surveillance and was the youngest participant in the crime. As a minor, Omar Costa was handed over to authorities that specialize in handling juvenile offenders. The investigation took about a year and a half to complete, and the trial did not begin until December 2017. It was discovered that Samadhi had a history of criminal activity. The verdict was not announced until January 23, 2018. According to the court decision, Samadhi was sentenced to 30 years in prison. Her daughter, as well as Ronald Archie and Cesar Chavez, received 25 years in prison each. Omar Costa, on the other hand, who had been following the victim, was acquitted. Gerardo Cruz's family has received $140,000 in moral damages. After the verdict was announced, relatives expressed gratitude to the court for giving Gerardo Cruz's killers a fair punishment. The case of Sherry Miller. Sherry Miller was born on October 13, 1971, in Flint, Michigan, a once prosperous Midwestern auto industry city that had fallen on hard times. Her childhood was marked by hardship, growing up without a father figure in her life. Her mother led a loose lifestyle, often drinking heavily and changing partners frequently. Sherry's childhood was spent in a trailer next to her mother's men, who regularly abused her. According to Sherry, she was abused from the age of 3 or 4. By the age of 16, she had left to fend for herself. At 17, she married, became pregnant, and had a child. However, her marriage eventually ended. Sherry remarried and divorced again. Her second husband, Tribby, had a history of violence and was convicted of second-degree child abuse for assaulting his own child, resulting in multiple skull fractures. Although Tribby was tried for abusing her 6-year-old daughter, he was acquitted due to insufficient evidence. By the age of 26, Sherry was a single mother of 3 children, each from a different father. To support her family, she worked multiple jobs. Although she may not be a model, Sherry possessed a charm that drew people to her. In 1997, Sherry's life changed when she started working as an accountant at B&O Auto Salvage, a company owned by 47-year-old Bruce Miller. It was there that she saw a man who could provide for her and her children. Bruce Miller was born on July 26, 1951. He spent many years working at General Motors. After leaving General Motors, Bruce Miller moved into the auto scrap business, where he would collect old cars and resell their parts. Bruce Miller was married 3 times and had a passion for racing and socializing. He was known for his generosity and openness to others. When Sherry joined his company as an employee, Bruce Miller initially wasn't interested in her romantically. However, Sherry eventually caught his attention, and they began an office romance despite their 20-year age difference. Their relationship progressed quickly. Bruce Miller was delighted with the attention Sherry was getting, and the couple quickly moved from dating to living together. Just 4 months later, on April 23, 1999, Bruce Miller and Sherry were married in Las Vegas. Sherry and her children moved in with Bruce Miller, finding the stability she craved. Bruce Miller's brother, Chuck Miller, said she thought Bruce Miller was the best thing that ever happened to her, finally having a normal life. However, Chuck Miller's wife was concerned about Sherry's overspending, maxing out credit cards and running out of available cash. Bruce Miller seemed unconcerned and largely ignored the issue. Sherry also worked, selling Mary Kay cosmetics to customers at home. Bruce Miller bought Sherry a computer to help monitor the account. In 1999, while using her home computer to research vacation destinations, Sherry stumbled upon adult chat rooms on the internet. Before social media and text messaging became popular, people often used online chat rooms to connect with others. Some of these chat rooms had adult content and allowed users to anonymously flirt and engage in virtual relationships. Bruce Miller knew that Sherry had been flirting with other people in these online chat rooms. However, he considered this behavior harmless and chose to trust her, not wanting to create tension in their marriage. Sherry quickly became comfortable in the virtual world, regularly logging into chat rooms and sharing her deepest desires with strangers under various pseudonyms. One of the men Sherry met online was Jerry Cassidy, who used the pseudonym Rena Dudes. Jerry was born on October 6, 1960, in Kansas City, Missouri, having been married, raised a son, and enjoyed deer hunting with his brothers. Jerry also had aspirations of becoming an FBI agent. Later, after becoming a police officer, Jerry exposed corruption in the police department by reporting falsified records to a colleague. However, this decision resulted in him being demoted and eventually forced to resign after 9 years of service. Despite doing the right thing. After losing his career, Jerry suffered from depression and began to abuse alcohol and drugs. During this period, his marriage fell apart. However, he managed to pick himself up and moved to Reno, Nevada, where he took a job as a security guard at Harrah's Casino. In his spare time, he frequented online chat rooms, where he eventually met Sherry. Jerry and Sherry began exchanging messages, which led to a face-to-face meeting in Reno in July 1999. Sherry attended a Mary Kay convention with a friend, using it as an opportunity to meet Jerry in person. Their online romance quickly turned into a physical relationship, giving Jerry hope that his life was about to improve. Sherry presented herself as a wealthy businesswoman who was married to a disabled man and was seeking a discreet sexual encounter. Jerry believed her story. Jerry was deeply infatuated with Sherry, telling his friend Carol Slaughter that she was extremely active in the bedroom. During the summer and fall, Sherry used her cosmetics business as a cover for secret trips to Reno, where she would meet Jerry. When they were apart, they exchanged sexually explicit messages and videos over the internet. They even went so far as to rename their online accounts, with Sherry calling herself Jerry's Fool and Jerry calling himself Sherry's Fool. Despite being an ex-cop, Jerry failed to see the warning signs, blinded by the affectionate emails. It seemed like Jerry was an easy target for Sherry. She quickly convinced Jerry that he needed to kill her husband. Those who knew Jerry noticed a significant change in him under her influence. In September, Sherry announced to Jerry that she was pregnant with his child. What Jerry did not know, however, was that Sherry had had a tubal ligation in 1995 and was unable to have children. Despite this, Sherry told Jerry that her husband, Bruce Miller, had discovered the pregnancy and beaten her, causing her to miscarry. Sherry then announced that she was pregnant again, this time with twins. Believing her lies, Jerry begged Sherry to leave her husband, take their supposed future children, and live with him. Sherry revealed that she could not leave her husband Bruce Miller because of his mafia ties, and she feared for her and Jerry's lives. During this time, Jerry got into trouble and was arrested at a casino for being drunk and disorderly. Their online communication stopped while Jerry was in custody. After his release, Jerry decided to protect Sherry from her husband by creating distance. Jerry returned to his family in Missouri, and the couple maintained their relationship through online chat rooms. Sherry continued to update Jerry, sharing photos of her pregnancy. Jerry was eager to believe it. However, on November 5, 1999, Jerry received an email purportedly from Bruce Miller stating that he knew about the pregnancy and vowed to prevent the child from being born. Concerned, Jerry tried to contact Sherry, who eventually sent him a text saying she needed to leave for a few days and would contact him later. The next day, Jerry received another text from Bruce Miller claiming that he had pressured Sherry into having an abortion. The text included pictures of Sherry, beaten and bruised. Jerry believes that Bruce Miller killed his unborn twins. Angry and grief-stricken, Jerry blames Bruce Miller for the deaths of his 3 children, including the twins, and the abuse of Sherry. On November 8, Jerry confided in Sherry that he could no longer continue the situation. Jerry was going to kill her husband, Bruce Miller. The couple then devised a plan to kill Bruce Miller, mapping out the route, parking, location, and best time to dispose of the body. Jerry drove from his home to Michigan to carry out the plan. That evening, as Bruce Miller was getting ready to leave work, Sherry called him and told him to pick up pizza on the way home, as planned. Jerry was waiting, and when Bruce Miller showed up, Jerry shot Bruce Miller with a 20-gauge shotgun. After the murder, Jerry returned home, and Sherry began the next part of her plan. She called Bruce Miller's brother, Chuck Miller, expressing concern about her husband being gone for so long, and asked him to check on Bruce Miller at the junkyard. When Chuck Miller arrived, he found Bruce Miller lying dead in a pool of blood. Witnesses reported that Bruce Miller had been shot in the chest at close range with a shotgun. When his wife Sherry heard the news, she began screaming and crying. Police found no evidence of a suspect. They discovered that Bruce Miller often carried large amounts of cash and initially suspected his death was the result of a robbery because his wallet was missing. None of the leads came up and the case was soon closed. Meanwhile, according to Bruce Miller's sister, Judy Miller, Sherry's behavior was not that of a grieving wife. 2 days after Bruce Miller's death, Sherry was spotted dancing at a bar in Otisville, Michigan. Within 2 weeks, she had found a new partner, Jeff Foster, a local delivery boy, and her relationship with Jerry was over. However, Jerry had hope. After killing Bruce Miller, he and Sherry would be together. But Sherry began to distance herself from Jerry. A month after the murder, she brought her new boyfriend, Jeff Foster, into her home and broke things off with Jerry, leaving him heartbroken. At this point, Jerry probably realized he had unjustly taken a life and was haunted by guilt. Jerry began to investigate, and he discovered that Sherry had lied and fabricated the whole thing. 3 months later, on February 11, 2000, Jerry committed suicide in his apartment in Odessa, Missouri, with a .22 caliber rifle. His body was found sitting with an open Bible on his lap. Jerry had condemned himself, accepted his guilt, and executed himself. Jerry's mother revealed in an interview that while cleaning the apartment, she accidentally found a briefcase hidden under the bed. Outside the briefcase was an envelope, and inside, they found 3 suicide notes. The contents of the letters indicate that Jerry confessed to killing Bruce Miller because he believed that Bruce Miller had abused Sherry and killed Jerry's 3 unborn children. However, the letters also made it clear that Sherry had lied to Jerry about the acts that Sherry had accused Bruce Miller of. In the letter, Jerry said that he went there and killed Bruce Miller. At the time, he was stupid and didn't realize the consequences of his actions. Now the truth about his depression is finally coming to light. He couldn't share his secret with anyone, and it consumed him. The truth is that Sherry wanted her husband dead so she could get the money. She got what she wanted, but she will soon learn that her actions will have consequences. He now understood that Sherry's actions were all a ruse. She had no qualms about hurting people. To back up his claim, Jerry provided transcripts of their text conversations. In between their intimate exchanges, Sherry had coached Jerry on how to locate dumpsters, where to park without being detected, and other important details. On February 22, 2000, the Jerry family's attorneys contacted the Jesse County Sheriff's Department with this new information. The police waited for Sherry Miller at the airport as she returned from a trip to Reno with her boyfriend, Jeff Foster. Sherry was arrested and charged with second-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder. Police described Sherry as a skilled manipulator who tricked her lover into killing her husband under false pretenses. Despite overwhelming evidence against her, Sherry maintained her innocence to her husband Bruce Miller's family. Her trial began on December 12, 2000, in Michigan, attracting national attention due to the internet-related crime. The prosecution presented thousands of text messages between Sherry and Jerry, exposing her deception. According to the prosecution, Sherry's motive for wanting her husband Bruce Miller dead was financial gain. However, the defense argued that Sherry only received a minimal amount of money after Bruce Miller died. The defense argued that Jerry, acting as a jilted lover, fabricated evidence against Sherry. Sherry maintained that the nature of their online communications was purely imaginative and not based on fact. Furthermore, she admitted to lying about her pregnancy, saying her intention was to help relieve Jerry's depression. She also admitted to falsely claiming abuse in order to convince Jerry to stop contacting her. Sherry adamantly denied writing the messages describing the crimes, instead claiming that Jerry, a former homicide detective, created them using his expertise. However, evidence of these messages was discovered on Sherry's computer. Sherry Miller was found guilty on December 22 and received a life sentence for the murder charge, as well as a 54 to 81-year sentence for conspiracy. In 2007, while incarcerated, Sherry was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder and other mental health conditions. She began treatment, filed an appeal, and even got married for the fourth time. Michael DeNoia was drawn to Sherry's story after seeing it on the news. Michael contacted her and they began corresponding. In 2008, Michael visited Sherry in prison and proposed to her. Although reports claim they were married in April 2008, there is no concrete evidence to support this. Sherry's fortunes changed when she won an appeal in 2008, resulting in her release from prison in 2009. A federal judge overturned her conviction, ruling that Jerry's suicide letter was inadmissible as evidence because it couldn't be scrutinized through cross-examination. The judge ordered a new trial and set bail, allowing Sherry to be released. In 2012, Sherry was sent back to prison to resume serving her original sentence after the court re-evaluated the admissibility of Jerry's suicide letter. Having spent 3 years outside, Sherry continued to maintain her innocence. In 2016, Sherry sent a 4-page typewritten letter to a district judge, abruptly confessing to her role in Bruce Miller's death. The sudden admission stunned everyone, as it was thought that Sherry would never voluntarily take responsibility. In the letter, Sherry wrote, "A pivotal moment came when she was forced to return to prison after 3 years of freedom. She had been living with her daughter and granddaughter, and she begged her daughter not to come with her when she was sent back to prison. However, her daughter refused to listen. As she walked through the prison doors, she turned around and saw her daughter crying, screaming, 'No, Mom, no, don't go.' It was then that she realized the devastation her crime had caused Bruce Miller and Bruce Miller's loved ones, including Jerry and his family." In a public interview in 2022 on a popular television channel, Sherry made some shocking confessions. She said that Bruce Miller had no connections to the mafia and had never abused her. Instead, she admitted that she used makeup to fake bruises and created fake ultrasound scans to trick Jerry. According to her, her motive was not financial gain. She claimed that she was afraid that Bruce Miller would discover her true nature. Sherry stated that sharing her story publicly helped her find some inner peace. However, she still struggles with guilt and shame, admitting it's difficult to look at herself in the mirror knowing what she did. After waiting for an opportunity to reveal the truth and find some sense of peace, Sherry remains imprisoned at the Huron Valley Women's Complex in Michigan. Sherry Miller has been sentenced to life in prison. Case of Mike Williams. Jerry Michael Williams was born on October 16, 1969, in Bradfordville, just north of Tallahassee. His parents worked as a bus driver and a kindergarten teacher. To those close to him, he was known as Mike. Despite financial struggles, which led to Mike and his older brother being raised in a trailer, but their childhood was filled with happiness. Furthermore, Mike's parents prioritized their son's education, setting aside money for their future instead of building a new home. Both boys attended North Florida Christian High School, where Mike excelled academically and socially. He served as student council president, played soccer, and actively participated in the Key Club. At 15, Mike developed a passion for duck hunting and met Denise Merrill, a cheerleader and council secretary. They began dating and formed a close bond. Their friends viewed Mike and Denise as a well-suited couple. During high school, Denise introduced Mike to Brian Winchester, and they became inseparable friends. Brian later befriended Kathy Thomas, and the two couples remained lifelong friends. After graduating from high school, Mike attended Florida State University, where he studied political science and urban planning. Denise and Mike graduated together, with Denise becoming a public accountant and Mike pursuing a career as a real estate appraiser. Mike was a hardworking individual who consistently put in 15-hour days, which ultimately led to his rapid career advancement. His personal life also flourished, as he married Denise in 1994. Around the same time, his friend Brian married Kathy. The two couples remained close friends. Mike was deeply devoted to his wife and worked tirelessly to provide for their family, exhibiting remarkable enthusiasm and dedication. At 31, Mike Williams was thriving as a real estate appraiser, earning nearly $200,000 annually. He and his wife lived in a small upscale neighborhood on the east side of town, and welcomed a daughter, Ensley, in 1999. Despite engaging in risky activities, but he was always cautious and wanted to ensure that his family would be well provided for in the event of an emergency. He turned to his best friend, Brian, an insurance agent, to purchase two insurance policies, one for $250,000 and another for $500,000. After his father's sudden death in 2000, Mike felt a strong need to secure his family's financial future, so he turned to a friend for help again. Brian assisted him in obtaining a life insurance policy with a value of $1 million. 6 months before Mike disappeared, he bought life insurance worth nearly $2 million. On December 16, 2000, Mike woke up early to go duck hunting on Lake Seminole, a large reservoir connected to the Apalachicola River. It was Mike's 6th wedding anniversary, and he planned to celebrate with his wife Denise that night. However, when Denise and their daughter waited for Mike to return home at noon, he failed to show up. Denise became concerned and called her father. Her father then contacted Mike's best friend, Brian Winchester. Brian and his father went to Lake Seminole, where they found Mike's Ford Bronco parked near the boat dock, but there was no sign of Mike. They searched the areas where Mike liked to hunt but couldn't find him or his boat. They decided to contact the police. Investigators from the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Agency were called in, and a search for Mike began. Later, a helicopter pilot spotted the boat drifting 225 feet from the boat ramp. When the boat was searched, Mike's shotgun was found, still in its case, shows that he has not used it. The search operation shifted from rescue to recovery. Locals believe the area was once an orchard before the three rivers were dammed to create the lake. The lake was nicknamed Stump Field due to the numerous remaining tree stumps above and below the waterline, which posed a hazard to motorized boats. Searchers hypothesized that Mike's boat struck a stump, causing him to fall into the water. His boots, filled with water, may have weighed him down, leading to his possible drowning. Additional agencies, including a dive team from Montgomery, Alabama, and the Jackson County Sheriff's Office, joined the search. Despite a thorough search, but no signs of Mike were found. As the days passed, the operation transitioned from rescue to a body recovery mission. Search teams used probe poles to scour the lake's bottom, and service dogs were brought in to assist. 10 days after, a hunting hat with a camouflage pattern was found, but there was no evidence connecting it to Mike. Officials from the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Agency speculated that Mike might have been consumed by alligators, which were abundant in the lake. The Florida Department of Law Enforcement found no evidence of foul play, reinforcing the theory that the incident was accidental. After a 5-week search, the effort to find Mike was halted. The following day, Denise organized a memorial service for her husband. Although Denise seemed to have accepted Mike's departure, his mother still found it difficult to accept. 6 months later, in June 2001, a fisherman discovered a pair of boots floating in the lake. A dive team searched the area and found a hunting jacket and a working flashlight on the lake floor. Inside the jacket pocket was Mike's hunting license, complete with his name and signature. The discovery raised several questions. Notably, neither the jacket nor the boots showed signs of an alligator attack, such as teeth marks. Additionally, none of the items appeared to have been in the water for 6 months, as the boots were not slimy. A week after the discovery, Denise's lawyer petitioned the court to declare Mike dead, citing the found items as evidence. The lawyer suggested that aquatic life, including alligators, might have consumed Mike's body entirely. The court approved this, and a death certificate was issued, stating that Mike died on December 16, 2000, due to accidental drowning while duck hunting on Lake Seminole. Mike's body was never recovered. Mike's mother, Cheryl Williams, continues to search for her son, although this causes tension in her relationship with Denise. Denise demanded Cheryl stop searching and accept reality, threatening that if she continued, she would never see her granddaughter again. Cheryl refused to give up. She was determined to find Mike. Her perseverance ultimately led to the reopening of the investigation into Mike's disappearance. It took Cheryl 3 years of tireless efforts, including making phone calls, putting up signs, writing to the governor of Florida, compiling evidence, and contacting reporters, to convince law enforcement officials to open an investigation into Mike's disappearance. Cheryl later revealed that her contacted Matthew Oresco, an expert on alligators. Oresco explained that alligators do not eat during the cold winter months due to low water temperatures, and their main priority is maintaining body heat. Temperatures as low as 14 degrees make alligators uninterested in food. Additionally, according to Oresco, alligator attacks always leave behind forensic evidence. 3 years later, Cheryl convinced law enforcement to dismiss the alligator theory and start a formal investigation into her son's disappearance. New discoveries regarding the behavior of alligators prompted a re-examination of the case. Evidence from interviews and data suggested that Mike's death was not an accident. Former investigator Ronnie Austin stated, "My instinct tells me Mike did not die in Lake Seminole, and that's what most law enforcement agencies working on this case agree on." Austin worked on Mike's case at the 2nd District State's Attorney's Office. The Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Agency initially handled the case as a missing hunter incident. They dedicated 735 hours to searching a 10-acre area of the lake for Mike's body, but surprisingly they did not find any signs of crime. Years later, those involved in the search, including police officer David Arnett, who was present at the scene, expressed that several things seemed unusual from the start. Firstly, it was unusual for Mike to hunt alone. Additionally, his truck was found in an undeveloped area, which would have required him to drag the boat through mud, rather than using the nearby concrete boat launch that he typically used. The severe storm that night should have pushed the boat towards the east shore, but it was instead found on the west shore. Additionally, the boat's motor was not running, yet it was still full of gasoline. If Mike had been operating the boat and fallen out, the boat would have continued to float in circles until it ran out of fuel. Law enforcement initially believed Mike's death was a simple drowning, but they later began to suspect foul play. However, by that time, the crime scene had already been trampled by numerous volunteers and searchers. A vital piece of evidence, a vehicle, was taken by Mike's family without being inspected by investigators. Additionally, some potential witnesses were overlooked. Denise and Brian were identified as suspects when investigators found out that Brian had just gone through a divorce from his previous wife, Kathy, and then quickly married Denise. Furthermore, Denise had received nearly $2 million from Mike's life insurance policy. Detectives also found it suspicious that Brian had sold Mike the policy. The investigation raised more red flags when Denise, Mike's wife, showed no interest in helping with the investigation and tried to prevent Mrs. Cheryl from participating in the search. Denise even prohibited Cheryl from speaking with her granddaughter. When questioned, Brian provided an alibi, claiming he was at home, 60 miles from the lake, on the morning of Mike's disappearance. His ex-wife, Kathy, corroborated his story. Brian also mentioned that he had planned to go hunting with his father-in-law that morning but overslept. Denise's interrogation did not reveal any new information. In 2008, the Florida Department of Law Enforcement concluded that Mike's disappearance was not an accident, which is a criminal offense. However, due to insufficient evidence, they were unable to prosecute. Despite this, Mike's mother, Cheryl Williams, continued to seek answers. The case was featured on the Discovery Cable channel in 2011, but Cheryl became increasingly frustrated with the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, feeling that they were either incompetent or uninterested in solving the case. In 2012, she began writing daily letters to Governor Rick Scott, requesting that he either reassign the investigation to another agency or appoint a special prosecutor. Over the course of 9 years, Cheryl sent 2,600 letters to the governor. Meanwhile, Denise and Brian's marriage was deteriorating. In 2012, Denise discovered Brian's infidelity, leading to their breakup. Denise filed for divorce the following year. During the lengthy divorce proceedings, an appraisal of their former home was scheduled in an effort to resolve their property disputes. This brought progress in Mike's case, as tensions between Denise and Brian reached a boiling point. Brian wanted to continue the marriage, but Denise wanted a divorce because they were constantly arguing, and things were further complicated by the stress of Mike's investigation. Brian started calling Denise repeatedly, but she stopped answering his calls. He became overwhelmed by the stress in their relationship. On August 5, 2016, Denise was set to have her home appraised as part of a court order. That morning, she left her home to drive to work at Florida State University. While speaking with her sister on the phone, she noticed someone climbing over the back seat of her car. It was Brian. Brian pressed a loaded gun against Denise's and instructed her to drive straight ahead. Brian said he did this extreme thing because she had quit answering his phone calls. Denise attempted to calm Brian down by agreeing with him and promising to give their marriage another chance. Brian seemed to believe her. Denise assured him that she wouldn't report the incident to the police, and Brian exited the vehicle. As he left, he took several items with him, including a brown sheet, plastic sheeting, a bleach sprayer, and tools. It became clear that Denise had narrowly escaped a potentially fatal situation. She immediately called emergency services, and Brian was quickly arrested. He was charged with kidnapping, a first-degree felony in Florida that carries a maximum life sentence. He also faced charges of domestic violence and burglary. The court ordered Brian to be held without bail. Cheryl Williams expressed hope that Brian's arrest might lead to a breakthrough in her son's case. Cheryl shared with the New York Daily News, Brian did not want Denise to keep all that money for herself. Cheryl hoped Brian will reveal what really happened. And ultimately, Brian did share what had transpired. Brian managed to negotiate a very favorable deal with the prosecutor, avoiding a life sentence, and then began telling his story. He explained that it all started when he discovered a note in Kathy's purse, revealing that she was cheating on him. This sparked a desire for revenge in Brian. Around that time, Brian and his friends, including Denise and her husband Mike, would often go to bars and concerts together. Brian had known Denise since high school, but he had never been attracted to her until Kathy's infidelity. His perspective on Denise changed after being cheated on. In October 1997, Brian and Denise started an affair. Initially, it was just a casual encounter at a rock concert, but it quickly developed into regular and secret dates. They would meet at hotels during the workday whenever they had the chance. Brian made it clear that he did not want to divorce Kathy, and Denise was adamant that she would never leave her husband Mike, as she cared deeply about public opinion and did not want to risk losing custody of her daughter. As their relationship progresses, it deepens and they begin to consider themselves a couple, often exchanging gifts and writing romantic letters to each other. They realized they couldn't continue living like this, as they couldn't bear to be apart. However, Denise did not think about getting a divorce because she wanted people to think she was a good and moral person. Around this time, Mike had a near-death experience in a hunting accident, and Brian saved his life. This gave Denise a ray of hope that they could get out of their current situation. After negotiating the deal with the prosecutor, Brian revealed that in the year 2000, he and Denise started discussing the possibility of Mike and Kathy dying. Denise wanted to make it look like an accident rather than a murder. After considering various options, Brian and Denise planned to fake a boating accident. This would allow them to collect the maximum amount from Mike's life insurance policy before it expired at the end of December 2000. They devised a plan, and Brian invited Mike on a hunting trip to a spot on Lake Simal's shores, telling him to bring his wading boots. The boots were crucial, as it was believed that wearing them would lead to rapid drowning if Mike fell overboard. However, when Brian pushed Mike into the water, the plan didn't unfold as expected. Instead of sinking, Mike grabbed onto nearby stumps and began wading towards the shore. Brian was in a state of panic. He didn't know how to handle the situation. Mike was loudly calling for help, and Brian felt overwhelmed. In his panic, Brian grabbed his shotgun and shot Mike in the head without thinking. The plan had gone terribly wrong, and now Brian had to cover up the incident. Time was running out because he had to go home and prepare for a hunting trip with his father-in-law. Since no one knew Brian was at the lake with Mike, he decided to return home and pretend he had overslept. He drove back, hoping to find his wife, Kathy, still asleep. Brian entered the house quietly, finding Kathy asleep and his phone on the floor. He went to bed, called his father-in-law to apologize, and began creating an alibi for himself. Meanwhile, he hid Mike's body. Denise didn't know what really happened when Mike went missing. Brian attempted to confess to her, but she refused to listen. She preferred to believe that Mike's disappearance was an act of God, allowing her to move on with her life. According to Brian, he and Denise made a promise to each other to keep the truth hidden forever. Denise and Brian claimed that Mike's death was necessary because they couldn't live together. They stated that the life insurance payout was just an added benefit. Brian would later testify in court. However, investigators discovered that Brian had planted evidence, including a hat, boots, flashlight, and license, to mislead searchers and create false evidence to declare Mike dead, allowing Denise to collect the insurance. Denise received around $2 million, including Social Security and other benefits. On May 8, 2018, Denise was charged with first-degree murder, conspiracy, and accessory to a felony, carrying a life sentence. She pleaded not guilty to all charges. In February 2019, Denise was sentenced to life in prison. 5 months later, her daughter Ansley received Mike's assets and insurance payout. Denise appealed the conviction and life sentence in January 2020. Her attorney arguing before the Florida 1st District Court of Appeal that there was no evidence of her direct involvement in the murder. In November 2020, Denise's murder conviction was overturned. However, her 30-year sentence for conspiracy to commit murder was upheld, and she is currently serving her sentence at the Florida Women's Reception Center. Denise is expected to be released when she is 78 years old. Brian was transferred to the Madison Correctional Institute in Florida to serve the remainder of his sentence. He is scheduled to be released on July 30th, 2036, when he will be 67 years old. Ansley, Mike and Denise's daughter, maintains her mother's innocence and blames Brian. Ansley has refused to speak to the media about the case and personal life. According to Cheryl and Nick, Ansley's uncle, they have been unable to reconnect with Ansley. Cheryl expressed her sorrow, stating that she has not only lost her son but also her connection with her granddaughter.